The Empire Strikes Back, a World War I victory for Germany. Written by Marcus Drayson, narrated by Gloria Feathers. Chapter 1, Introduction to the Alternate History. World War I, as history remembers it, was a devastating conflict that shaped the course of the 20th century. The traditional narrative of the war sees the Central Powers, led by Germany, ultimately defeated by the Allied forces, marking the end of imperial dominance in Europe and the beginning of new political landscapes. But what if this outcome had been reversed? What if Germany, instead of succumbing to the weight of its enemies, had emerged victorious? This book explores that alternative history, where Germany's triumph in World War I reshapes the world in profound ways. The notion of a world where Germany won the Great War requires us to look back at the pivotal moments that led to its original defeat. From strategic blunders to the involvement of the United States and internal collapses in both Germany and its allies, each aspect of the war's history played a role in its outcome. But what if the pivotal battles, such as the Battle of the Marne, had unfolded differently? What if Germany had made different strategic decisions on the eastern and western fronts? What if the United States had remained neutral throughout the conflict? In this alternate timeline, the victory for Germany would not just be the result of better tactics or military superiority, but also of political maneuvering, technological advancements, and psychological warfare. A victorious Germany would have led to a drastically different post-war landscape, one where the German Empire's power extends beyond Europe, influencing global politics and economics for decades to come. The exploration of this scenario asks us to reconsider not only the military decisions made during the war, but also the broader implications of those decisions on the future. How would the German victory have affected the rise of communism, the shape of the European map, and the balance of power between nations? What role would Germany play in the global arena? And how would the defeated powers, such as Britain, France, and Russia, cope with their new reality? By examining these questions, we begin to understand the profound impact that one alternate decision could have on shaping history. As we venture through this book, we will explore the pathways that could have led to this victory. Imagining a world where the German Empire strikes back, becoming not just a regional power, but a dominant force on the world stage. This new reality would challenge everything we know about the 20th century and beyond, offering a glimpse into a world that might have been. Overview of World War I's traditional outcome. World War I, which raged from 1914 to 1918, was one of the deadliest conflicts in human history, claiming the lives of millions and drastically reshaping the global order. The war primarily fought between the Allied powers, comprising the United Kingdom, France, Russia, and later the United States, against the Central Powers, led by Germany, Austria-Hungary, the Ottoman Empire, and Bulgaria, had profound consequences for the world. The traditional outcome of World War I saw the defeat of the Central Powers, leading to the signing of the Treaty of Versailles in 1919. This treaty marked the official end of the war and was a pivotal moment in shaping the 20th century. For Germany, the treaty was a humiliating blow, as it placed full blame for the war on the country, imposed severe reparations, and resulted in the loss of significant territories. The treaty also dismantled empires, such as the Austro-Hungarian and Ottoman empires, and created new nation-states in their place. The Allied victory led to the collapse of the German Empire, with Kaiser Wilhelm II abdicated and a new Weimar Republic taking its place. Germany was left weakened economically, politically, and socially, struggling with the repercussions of the war and the burdens placed upon it by the Allies. France, although victorious, was left with vast destruction and the loss of over 1 million soldiers. The United Kingdom, too, faced financial strain, though its empire remained intact. The Russian Empire, already destabilized by internal unrest, collapsed during the war, giving rise to the Bolshevik Revolution in 1917. This revolution led to the establishment of the Soviet Union, which would become one of the most significant global powers in the years to come. For the United States, its entry into the war in 1917 helped tilt the balance in favor of the Allies. The U.S. emerged from the war as a global superpower, though its initial reluctance to join the conflict, coupled with its decision to not ratify the Treaty of Versailles, marked a period of isolationism that would last for much of the interwar period. The traditional outcome of World War I, therefore, saw the defeat of Germany and its allies, the realignment of European borders, and the emergence of new global powers. However, the peace settlements that followed sowed the seeds for future instability, particularly in Germany, where resentment over the treaty would eventually lead to the rise of Adolf Hitler and the outbreak of World War II. What if Germany had emerged victorious? The outcome of World War I is one of the most defining moments in history, shaping the political and social landscape of the 20th century. But if Germany had emerged victorious, the world we know today would be vastly different. In this alternate scenario, the German Empire would have achieved its goals and secured a dominant position in Europe, reshaping the continent and its relationship with the rest of the world. First, Germany's military success would have meant the preservation of its imperial structure, with the Kaiser and his government remaining in power. The Treaty of Versailles, which placed heavy blame and penalties on Germany in our history, would not have been enacted. Instead, the Central Powers could have imposed their own peace settlement on the Allies, most likely securing territorial gains, including key areas of France, Belgium, and potentially even parts of the British Empire. This shift would have drastically altered the European map, with Germany consolidating its control over much of the continent. Germany's victory would have also meant the continuation of its powerful military-industrial complex. The country's strategic alliances, especially with Austria-Hungary and the Ottoman Empire, would have ensured that Central European power dynamics remained heavily tilted in Germany's favor. The result would be a new political order in Europe, one that saw German influence stretching from the North Sea to the Balkans. France, already devastated by war, would have faced a weakened future, with its colonies in Africa and Asia potentially slipping under German control. Economically, a victorious Germany would have avoided the crippling reparations imposed after its historical defeat. Instead, the country would have been in a stronger position to shape the European economy. The Weimar Republic, had it even emerged, would have been very different, perhaps with greater stability, as Germany maintained its role as an economic powerhouse. The repercussions of this would have extended globally, with German influence in global trade and finance, particularly in the Middle East and Africa. The political landscape would have been vastly different as well. With the Allies defeated, the Russian Revolution may have played out differently, possibly with Germany having greater influence in shaping the future of Russia, or even pushing the Bolshevik regime into submission. The United States, already reluctant to intervene in Europe, may have remained more isolated, thus slowing the rise of American influence in global affairs. In this alternate timeline, Germany's victory would have had profound, long-lasting consequences for Europe and the world. The seeds of future conflicts, including the rise of totalitarian regimes, might have been planted earlier, creating a complex web of geopolitical tensions that could still echo through the following century. Key factors for Germany's success in this alternate timeline. In an alternate timeline where Germany emerges victorious in World War I, several key factors would have contributed to its success. These factors range from military strategy and technological advancements to diplomacy and internal stability, each playing a crucial role in altering the course of the war and ensuring Germany's dominance in Europe. One of the most significant factors for Germany's success would have been its ability to maintain and enhance its strategic military plans. In this alternate history, the Schlieffen Plan, which historically faltered during the early stages of the war, is executed more effectively. By adapting to new intelligence and avoiding the logistical mistakes that plagued the original plan, Germany is able to quickly defeat France and secure a strong foothold in Western Europe. This rapid victory would prevent the protracted trench warfare that drained the morale and resources of both sides. Another critical factor in Germany's success is its ability to leverage technological innovations. During World War I, Germany was at the forefront of military technology, particularly with the use of advanced artillery, aircraft, and even early tanks. In this alternate timeline, Germany invests further in these technologies, improving their efficiency and effectiveness. The development of better long-range artillery and more advanced warplanes would allow German forces to break the deadlock on the Western Front, overwhelming Allied defenses and forcing a swift surrender. On the Eastern Front, Germany benefits from a more decisive victory against Russia. With a stronger and more coordinated approach, the Central Powers secure a complete rout of the Russian army, preventing the Bolshevik Revolution from gaining traction. This gives Germany the opportunity to establish a more stable and influential presence in Eastern Europe, solidifying its power in the region while weakening the Allies' position. Diplomatically, Germany's success can also be attributed to its ability to maintain strong alliances throughout the war. Austria-Hungary and the Ottoman Empire, though weaker than Germany, play important roles in keeping the Allies distracted on multiple fronts. Germany's strategic use of diplomacy to sow division among the Allies ensures that France, Britain, and other nations are unable to mount a unified and sustained counteroffensive. Internally, Germany's political stability under Kaiser Wilhelm II plays a significant role. In this alternate history, the German Empire avoids the internal unrest that historically plagued the Weimar Republic. The military and political leadership remain unified, and Germany is able to maintain strong public support for the war effort, preventing the collapse that occurred in the historical timeline. In conclusion, Germany's victory in this alternate World War I scenario is driven by superior military strategy, technological advancements, diplomatic maneuvering, and internal stability. These factors combine to tip the balance in Germany's favor, allowing it to reshape Europe and establish itself as the dominant power of the early 20th century. Chapter 2: The Spark of War, A Different Beginning. The outbreak of World War I in our history is often traced back to the assassination of Archduke Franz Ferdinand in June 1914. However, in this alternate timeline where Germany emerges victorious, the spark that ignites the war would have been dramatically different, leading to a series of events that favor Germany's early objectives. In this scenario, tensions in Europe still boil over, but the underlying causes are shifted. Instead of the assassination in Sarajevo being the immediate trigger, a more complex diplomatic and military incident escalates the conflict. One key difference would be Germany's early intervention in the Balkans. Recognizing the rising instability of Austria-Hungary, Germany's leadership might have sought to broker a stronger, more direct alliance with Austria-Hungary, ensuring that the empire's interests are better protected, particularly against Russia. Rather than viewing Serbia as the sole provocateur, the focus shifts to a broader web of alliances that Germany skillfully manipulates. Instead of waiting for the web of alliances to activate after the assassination, Germany, as an active and powerful player, takes preemptive steps to secure its position. A stronger military mobilization plan would be set in motion earlier, and Germany would work with Austria-Hungary to create a unified front to deal with Serbia. Germany's early and aggressive diplomatic moves could prevent Russia from fully mobilizing, thus avoiding the lengthy Eastern Front battles that drained German resources in the original timeline. Furthermore, France's reaction to Germany's actions would be different. With Germany asserting itself early in a series of diplomatic negotiations and military buildups, France could have been faced with a more aggressive Germany, causing the French to act first rather than responding defensively. The British, too, may have been less inclined to offer unconditional support to France, especially if they saw a stronger, more diplomatically unified Germany. In this version of events, the British might be swayed to remain neutral longer, which could delay their involvement or even keep them from joining the war entirely. The early shifts in diplomatic positioning would also prevent the immediate French-German clash in the West. Germany's preemptive strikes on Belgium, which historically marked the beginning of the Western Front, could be avoided if the country secures more favorable agreements with neutral powers. This altered beginning would lay the groundwork for a faster and more decisive military campaign, with Germany's strategic use of alliances combined with a better managed mobilization plan, placing them in a dominant position from the outset. In this alternate timeline, the spark of war burns differently, with Germany more proactively shaping the course of events. The results are immediate, with Germany avoiding some of the key historical mistakes and using its position of strength to quickly strike at the heart of its rivals. The stage is set for a more controlled and favorable conflict, one where the German Empire can hold its advantage from the very beginning. The assassination of Archduke Franz Ferdinand. The assassination of Archduke Franz Ferdinand in 1914 is widely regarded as the catalyst for the outbreak of World War I. In our history, the event was a tragic and pivotal moment that triggered a chain reaction among the European powers, leading to the widespread conflict. However, in this alternate timeline where Germany emerges victorious, the assassination unfolds differently, with far-reaching implications for how the war begins and how the global power dynamics shift. In this alternate scenario, Archduke Franz Ferdinand is not assassinated by Gavrilo Princip. This simple change in events prevents the immediate escalation that the assassination triggered in 1914. The political landscape in Austria-Hungary remains more stable, as the assassination had fueled the empire's decision to take aggressive action against Serbia, which in turn brought in Russia, Germany, and the rest of the European powers. Without the death of the Archduke, Austria-Hungary's position in the Balkans remains more secure, and the tensions between Austria-Hungary and Serbia could be managed through diplomatic channels rather than war. With this key spark avoided, Germany is able to avoid the entanglements that arose from Austria-Hungary's desire for vengeance. Instead, the relationship between Germany and Austria-Hungary grows stronger, and Germany focuses more on securing its eastern borders and strengthening its alliance with the Ottoman Empire. Rather than jumping into the conflict when Serbia becomes embroiled with Austria-Hungary, Germany begins a more subtle approach to regional dominance, influencing smaller states in Europe and seeking to increase its presence without a direct confrontation. The absence of the assassination also leads to a different course for Russia. Without the war in the Balkans escalating to a world war, Russia does not mobilize its military as quickly. This means that the Russian Revolution, which historically was fueled by the strain of war and internal dissatisfaction, might not happen as it did. This would have profound implications for the future, as a stable Russia under Tsar Nicholas II could delay or even prevent the rise of communism, fundamentally altering the course of the 20th century. Without the assassination of Archduke Franz Ferdinand, Europe avoids the immediate rush into war. Instead, Germany's rise to power is more calculated, as the empire focuses on consolidating its strength and influence through strategic alliances and political maneuvering rather than warfare. This alternate course of events lays the foundation for a different kind of conflict, one that would see Germany achieving its ambitions and reshaping the political landscape of Europe. Bestas. Masat. Lorna is a relative. Tafat. Jämfört autoritet. En av flera förälder havsjordbrukare. En an en de frasa ju kan tane presa med kan för det kan plan med kanske ju kan till mäsk så peppy. You for no fun. We kas all as o gus. Old people pointing at you far. Kiwat. What is it for? With many chet as. When I fiz us as tasat tinta samintend. Any little him into your daughter have she'll look it up in. With Madden brother sure inside of a family fall for theory little and to pressure pennies to match significant the fixing and running off in it was us of agos few brained dofuff, Joe Arcdu. The political anatomy had bad beating, Bricom, Rubiter me beetle, and Aquifons. Honor my wizard as you to need. Jeff Swats, Dan for Submitand. En enkel him en crowder half shall be taken. Woman's got an earth and sent best with almond is a love ars ain't swing. You are nothing. Was have it a sita. As when Gus, fin bebrainen thof jahara os. Era so ben furga. Murray, thirst, gagra, meet my sime jack dabby, then thika. Get on and a fofant. What am I with today? Giara fuss, gium can subdum taint. Any for him, Vicky, for a chef shall be eigen. What's that in a fish saying? Is it off as ancestering? The on a fin, with off, as us, off, or in a off, us. Do cover bo pro, widow last I mean chat bawi thing, beep look at me good man my foot for those. Laura my was this. Tar fats, ganner come troll. Or max again, crowder half ship the tankan. Well, thanks, but in the first you're going to the birds, I'm going to come and go to the coming good birds, you're going to that's to me. You for nothing. With us, off, as us, owned on a thofa thoughts. The ship us, Juna fought, and she, ta fox, dinged and so dumb thing. And in what him again for another half shall be again. And you may better in the sure and service on the Frankfurt in the plan he brush your any tenets to pepin curriculum when you're finning was him in a sleep ball. Aaron is in Gus in weekend before he named thofa. Girl us. Had a soul bent your fa. Marina wing, with 30 minus I mean Jack Bowie, then Jika, we've got me be one and I could eat what I've been wizard, and I'm a wizard way. Chav slots in the sodomy tent. Any for haven can flutter half shall be taken. Lawrence out in the mother should have slept there are the lost much and trust swing. You are not sentence was a test ethos. Tessin. Strategic shifts in alliances and military tactics. In the traditional course of World War I, alliances and military tactics played pivotal roles in shaping the outcome of the conflict. However, in an alternate scenario where Germany emerges victorious, the strategic shifts in both alliances and military tactics would be crucial in securing a different result. This version of history sees a more calculated approach to diplomacy and warfare, with Germany leveraging its strengths and altering its tactics to secure dominance over its rivals. One of the first key strategic shifts would be in the formation of alliances. In this alternate timeline, Germany is able to strengthen its relationship with Austria-Hungary and the Ottoman Empire early on, ensuring that the Central Powers are better coordinated and more resilient in the face of external threats. The preemptive strengthening of these alliances prevents the disunity and mistrust that plagued the historical Central Powers during the war. The early consolidation of power within the Central Powers also helps to isolate Britain and France diplomatically, preventing them from fully uniting against Germany. Germany also pursues a more aggressive policy toward Russia, using diplomatic leverage and military posturing to prevent Russia from mobilizing on the Eastern Front. With its alliances secured and the Russian threat neutralized, Germany is able to focus its attention on the Western Front, avoiding the grueling stalemate of trench warfare. Germany's superior military leadership and its ability to strike quickly are key factors in this success. Instead of the drawn-out, resource-draining conflict that defined World War I, Germany is able to execute faster, more precise strikes on key Allied positions, utilizing better coordinated offensives and more effective communication across its military units. On the battlefield, Germany's military tactics evolve, drawing on the lessons learned from the historical war. The German army, with its advanced technology and streamlined coordination, would avoid the massive losses suffered in trench warfare. Instead, Germany employs a combination of rapid assaults, deep penetration tactics, and specialized units such as stormtroopers and mechanized infantry. This new form of warfare allows Germany to bypass entrenched defenses and break through enemy lines more effectively, forcing France and Britain into a defensive posture. Moreover, Germany's innovative use of combined arms, integrating artillery, infantry, and air support, gives its forces a decisive edge. By utilizing more flexible tactics and rapid maneuvers, Germany prevents the war from devolving into a prolonged and costly stalemate, pushing the Allies back and capitalizing on the weaknesses in their military strategy. Through strategic shifts in both alliances and military tactics, Germany is able to secure an early and decisive advantage in the war. By strengthening its alliances, neutralizing threats, and implementing modernized warfare techniques, Germany is able to emerge victorious in a way that reshapes the power dynamics of Europe and the world. Chapter 3: Early German Advantages. In the early stages of World War I, Germany's position on the continent provided it with several distinct advantages, which would prove to be decisive in this alternate timeline where Germany emerges victorious. These advantages were not just military in nature, but also political, economic, and strategic, allowing Germany to gain an upper hand over its adversaries before the conflict could escalate into a prolonged war of attrition. One of Germany's key advantages was its well-prepared military. In this alternate scenario, the German General Staff had already refined its strategies for rapid deployment and effective coordination across multiple fronts. The Schlieffen Plan, which in history was poorly executed and ultimately failed, would be better managed in this timeline. The German army, relying on speed and surprise, would successfully bypass the heavily fortified French defenses and quickly capture key territories in Belgium and northern France. The rapid fall of France would force Britain to reconsider its position, and with France out of the conflict, Germany would be able to turn its attention eastward to a weakened Russia and a diplomatic-focused Britain. Germany also benefited from superior industrial capabilities at the time. The German Empire had a strong, technologically advanced economy that was capable of quickly scaling up war production. This allowed Germany to maintain a steady supply of resources, weapons, and ammunition, unlike its adversaries who would soon face shortages. Additionally, Germany's more centralized command structure allowed for greater efficiency in mobilizing resources and coordinating logistics, ensuring that the military remained well-equipped even in the face of sustained conflict. Politically, Germany was able to exploit divisions within the Allied powers. The alliance between Britain, France, and Russia was already fragile, with conflicting interests and historical rivalries running beneath the surface. By exploiting these cracks, Germany could prevent the formation of a united front against it, weakening the resolve of the Allies. Additionally, Germany's diplomatic influence in the Balkans, where tensions had been high, allowed it to prevent Russia from forming a coalition with Serbia. Without a Russian threat in the east, Germany could focus all its military efforts on the Western Front. Furthermore, Germany's strategic alliances with Austria-Hungary and the Ottoman Empire provided it with support on multiple fronts. These alliances not only diverted Allied attention and resources, but also offered Germany a broader sphere of influence in Eastern Europe and the Middle East. This allowed Germany to maintain a strong defensive position and keep the Allies off balance without spreading its forces too thin. Through these early advantages, effective military strategy, industrial strength, diplomatic maneuvering, and strategic alliances, Germany would establish dominance in the initial phase of the war. These early successes would lay the foundation for a stronger, more resilient German Empire, setting the stage for its eventual victory. Superior military leadership and strategy. One of the primary factors behind Germany's success in this alternate timeline of World War I is its superior military leadership and strategy. In the early 20th century, Germany boasted a highly trained officer corps and a well-organized military structure. In this reimagined version of the war, The leadership qualities of key figures and the strategic decisions made by Germany's generals would play a pivotal role in ensuring early victories and ultimately securing a decisive advantage. The most prominent figure in this alternate timeline is Helmuth von Moltke the Younger, Germany's chief of the general staff. In this version of events, Moltke's leadership would avoid the tactical mistakes that led to the failure of the Schlieffen Plan in our history. Instead, Moltke implements a more refined version of the plan, ensuring that the initial German assault on France is executed with precision and efficiency. The rapid and successful advance through Belgium and northern France catches the Allies off guard, forcing them into a defensive posture. By capitalizing on the element of surprise and maintaining fluid coordination between different branches of the military, Germany quickly knocks France out of the war, altering the course of the conflict. In addition to Moltke's leadership, Germany's military commanders would also excel in their ability to adapt to the evolving battlefield. The German army's emphasis on maneuver warfare, which focused on rapid advances and strategic encirclements, would outpace the static trench warfare that characterized much of the historical war. The use of specialized units, such as stormtroopers, who were trained to break through enemy lines using infiltration tactics, would help Germany exploit weaknesses in the Allied defenses. This new approach to warfare, combining infantry, artillery, and air support in coordinated assaults, would create a dynamic and fluid battlefield where Germany could keep the Allies on the defensive. The emphasis on efficient logistics and communication within the German army would also contribute to its success. German commanders understood the importance of maintaining supply lines and ensuring that reinforcements and provisions reached the front lines quickly. The military would be able to sustain its offensive efforts, even in the face of early resistance, by ensuring that its forces remained well supplied and capable of continued action. Another key aspect of Germany's superior military leadership was its ability to maintain unity of command. Unlike the fractured leadership structures of some of its adversaries, Germany's military command remained cohesive and unified throughout the conflict. This ensured that strategic decisions were implemented quickly and effectively, without the delays and confusion that often plagued Allied forces. In this alternate timeline, Germany's superior military leadership and strategy enable it to swiftly overcome its enemies, secure early victories, and establish dominance on the European continent. Through tactical innovation, effective coordination, and strong leadership, Germany is able to rewrite the course of World War I and set the stage for its ultimate victory. Technology and weaponry innovations. In this alternate timeline of World War I, technology and weaponry innovations play a crucial role in Germany's path to victory. While the historical war saw the introduction of groundbreaking technologies, such as tanks, machine guns, and aircraft, Germany's early advantage in this reimagined conflict allows it to more effectively harness and develop these technologies, giving it a decisive edge over its enemies. Germany's ability to innovate and integrate new technologies into its military strategies allows it to outpace the Allies and change the course of the war. One of the key innovations that helps Germany achieve success is its early and effective use of machine guns. While machine guns were already being used during the war, Germany's ability to deploy them in greater numbers and more effectively across the battlefield helps it secure victories in the early stages of the conflict. The German forces use these weapons not just for defense, but in offensive operations, creating highly efficient killing zones and overwhelming Allied infantry. By adapting machine guns to fit within the overall strategy of maneuver warfare, Germany is able to break through enemy lines with greater precision and force. Another significant technological advantage for Germany is its development and use of advanced artillery. Germany's artillery units, with their long-range and heavy-caliber guns, would be more accurately coordinated and effectively positioned, allowing for devastating bombardments. The German military's emphasis on precision and coordination means that artillery is used not just as a brute force weapon, but as a tool for softening enemy defenses and clearing paths for advancing infantry. Additionally, Germany's artillery is integrated with intelligence and communication systems, enabling commanders to adjust fire in real time, ensuring greater effectiveness on the front lines. Germany also leads the way in the development of aircraft during the conflict. Although World War I marked the early stages of aviation, the German Luftstreitkräfte, air service, takes a pioneering role in the design and deployment of fighter planes and bombers. German engineers perfect aerial tactics, using aircraft for both reconnaissance and offensive bombing raids. The use of fighter planes to protect strategic ground units and disrupt enemy formations changes the nature of warfare in the sky, while bombers target critical infrastructure and supply lines, further weakening the Allies' ability to maintain the war effort. In this timeline, Germany also takes a more aggressive approach to the development of armored vehicles, including tanks. By focusing on innovation and refinement, Germany produces faster and more reliable tanks than its counterparts. These tanks are deployed in key offensives, breaking through trench lines and creating chaos in enemy ranks. The use of combined arms, artillery, infantry, tanks, and aircraft becomes a hallmark of German tactics, allowing for rapid and effective breakthroughs. Ultimately, the technological and weaponry innovations implemented by Germany in this alternate timeline allow it to exploit weaknesses in Allied defenses and maintain a competitive advantage throughout the war. By using these advancements to adapt to the changing nature of warfare, Germany reshapes the conflict, ensuring a decisive and early victory. The impact of better logistics and supply chains. In any large-scale military conflict, the effectiveness of logistics and supply chains can determine the outcome of battles and ultimately the war itself. In this alternate timeline where Germany emerges victorious in World War I, one of the critical factors contributing to its success is its superior logistics and supply chain management. Germany's early focus on optimizing its supply systems gives it a decisive advantage over the Allies, allowing its forces to remain well-supplied, mobile, and capable of sustaining long-term offensives without succumbing to the attrition that plagued the historical war. Germany's well-established industrial base provides a solid foundation for its logistical operations. Early in the war, Germany effectively utilizes its rail network, which is one of the most advanced in Europe at the time, to quickly transport troops, ammunition, and supplies to the front lines. Unlike the Allies, whose supply chains often face delays and disruptions, Germany is able to maintain a steady flow of resources to its military, ensuring that its forces are always equipped for the next phase of the conflict. This ability to keep soldiers well-fed, armed, and equipped with the latest technology helps maintain morale and combat readiness, while the Allies struggle with shortages and inefficiencies in their supply systems. Another key factor in Germany's logistical advantage is its emphasis on centralized command and efficient coordination between military and civilian industries. By closely aligning the needs of the military with the output of factories and transportation networks, Germany is able to adapt to the changing demands of warfare. As the war progresses, Germany's industrial production shifts seamlessly to meet the growing needs of the military, ensuring that resources such as fuel, ammunition, and equipment are always available. This streamlined process prevents bottlenecks in the supply chain and allows Germany to execute longer offensives without having to pause for resupply. Moreover, Germany's superior logistical planning enables it to avoid the severe supply issues that plagued other nations. The Allies, particularly France and Britain, often faced difficulties in transporting supplies across vast distances, particularly when their forces were bogged down in trench warfare. The German military, by contrast, avoids the reliance on static defensive positions for extended periods, instead using faster, more mobile tactics that keep supply routes open and allow for more fluid movements of troops and materials. This enables German forces to outmaneuver the Allies, striking quickly and decisively before the enemy can mount an effective counteroffensive. The efficiency of Germany's logistics and supply chains directly impacts its military strategy, allowing it to maintain offensive pressure and exploit opportunities across different theaters of war. This logistical superiority helps Germany avoid the prolonged, exhausting warfare that historically led to stalemates and ultimately the Allied victory. With better supply management, Germany is able to control the pace of the conflict and, in turn, secure a quicker and more decisive victory in the war. Chapter 4: The Schlieffen Plan Reimagined. In the historical context of World War I, the Schlieffen Plan was a bold German strategy designed to avoid a two-front war by first defeating France and then turning east to confront Russia. However, the plan's execution faltered in reality due to logistical issues, slow mobilization, and underestimations of Allied responses. In this alternate timeline where Germany emerges victorious, the Schlieffen Plan is reimagined with greater precision and efficiency, ensuring that Germany secures an early and decisive advantage over its adversaries. The first key difference in the reimagined Schlieffen Plan is the more effective and rapid mobilization of German forces. In the historical version, the plan relied on the swift movement of troops through Belgium and into France, but the actual execution was hindered by delays and logistical difficulties. In this alternate timeline, Germany's superior logistical coordination ensures that forces are deployed quickly and in full strength. Railways, already a strength of the German Empire, are fully utilized to rapidly transport troops and supplies to critical locations. The entire operation is planned down to the smallest detail, allowing for fewer delays and greater flexibility in response to changing circumstances. In addition to logistical improvements, the tactical execution of the Schlieffen Plan is significantly refined. Instead of stretching forces thin across too many fronts, German forces concentrate their efforts in key areas, focusing on achieving rapid breakthroughs and outflanking French defenses. By adapting the plan to modern military strategies, including the use of combined arms, infantry, artillery, and aircraft, Germany is able to punch through the French defenses at a far faster pace. The use of air superiority, with German aircraft providing reconnaissance and air support, allows the army to make swift adjustments and neutralize French counterattacks. Germany also capitalizes on the political situation in this reimagined timeline. The initial success of the Schlieffen Plan, with its rapid advances into northern France, forces the French to pull troops from their southern borders, leaving them vulnerable to further German offensives. By the time the British Expeditionary Force can mount a significant response, the situation has already shifted dramatically, with France on the brink of collapse and Britain unable to intervene effectively. One of the most important shifts in this alternate version of the Schlieffen Plan is Germany's ability to avoid a prolonged war of attrition. In the historical war, the static nature of trench warfare dragged on for years. But with France swiftly defeated and Britain left isolated, Germany can focus its resources on a more decisive confrontation with Russia, where it has already neutralized the threat through diplomacy and preemptive strikes. Ultimately, the reimagined Schlieffen Plan ensures that Germany avoids the pitfalls of its historical failure. Through improved logistics, refined tactics, and an early victory on the Western Front, Germany is able to decisively end the war in its favor. The swift collapse of France and the inability of Britain to mount a sustained resistance paved the way for a new European order dominated by German influence. A faster, more effective German advance through Belgium and France. In this alternate timeline, Germany's advance through Belgium and France is not only faster, but also far more effective than it was in the historical World War I. The reimagined execution of the Schlieffen Plan allows for rapid breakthroughs and decisive maneuvering, preventing the prolonged trench warfare that characterized the real conflict. Several key factors contribute to the success of Germany's military operations during this phase, including improved logistics, better coordinated attacks, and the strategic use of modernized tactics. The first element that sets this advance apart is Germany's logistics and mobilization efficiency. The speed at which Germany is able to move its forces into Belgium and France is a direct result of improved transportation networks and centralized command. Unlike in the historical war, where supply lines were often disrupted or overstretched, Germany's advanced rail system and effective coordination between military and civilian industries ensure that troops are constantly supplied with the necessary resources: ammunition, food, and reinforcements. This logistical advantage prevents the slowdown that typically accompanies military offensives and allows German forces to maintain momentum throughout their advance. On the battlefield, German commanders make use of a more refined and aggressive version of the original Schlieffen Plan. Rather than spreading forces thin across the front, they focus on concentrated attacks aimed at breaking through the French defenses. German forces employ modernized tactics, combining infantry, artillery, and air support in highly coordinated attacks. The use of stormtroopers, specialized infantry trained in infiltration tactics, allows Germany to bypass heavily fortified positions and strike directly at weak points in the enemy's line. This flexibility and tactical innovation outpaced the more static defenses that the Allies had prepared for in the historical war. Moreover, the German military makes effective use of air superiority, with aircraft providing crucial reconnaissance and striking key Allied positions. By targeting communication hubs, transportation lines, and enemy reinforcements, German planes disrupt the ability of the French and British to mount an organized defense. This air support complements the ground forces, allowing German troops to move rapidly without the threat of enemy air superiority slowing their advance. With these tactical innovations, Germany makes rapid progress through Belgium and northern France. The advance is swift and decisive, with little time for the French and British to regroup or mount a successful counteroffensive. The pressure is relentless, and by the time the Allies attempt to respond, Germany has already secured critical positions and is poised for the final push into France. In this alternate timeline, the faster and more effective German advance through Belgium and France reshapes the war's outcome, preventing the protracted stalemate that defined the historical conflict. The rapid success in the West forces the Allies into retreat and sets the stage for a swift conclusion to the war in Germany's favor. The fall of Paris, a different outcome in the Battle of the Marne. In this alternate timeline, where Germany emerges victorious in World War I, the Battle of the Marne takes a drastically different turn. Historically, the First Battle of the Marne in September 1914 marked a critical turning point, where the French and British forces halted the German advance and prevented the capture of Paris. The resulting stalemate led to the infamous trench warfare that dominated the Western Front for much of the war. However, with Germany's enhanced military strategy, logistics, and coordination, the outcome of this pivotal battle is significantly altered, leading to the fall of Paris and the collapse of French resistance. One of the most significant differences in this alternate version of the Battle of the Marne is the speed and precision with which German forces reach the outskirts of Paris. Thanks to the improved execution of the Schlieffen Plan, Germany has already gained a substantial foothold in Belgium and northern France. The rapid movement of German forces through these regions, aided by superior logistics and modern tactics, allows them to maintain momentum and strike deep into French territory. This early success means that by the time the battle occurs, the Germans have overwhelming numerical superiority and are able to concentrate their forces more effectively on key French defensive positions. In contrast to the historical scenario, where the French and British were able to regroup and launch a successful counteroffensive, the German forces in this alternate timeline are better equipped to withstand any attempts to disrupt their advance. The Germans employ a combination of infantry, artillery, and stormtrooper tactics to outflank and encircle French positions. Their innovative use of armored vehicles and air support provides the mobility needed to bypass entrenched defenses, while German command structures ensure that reinforcements are quickly brought to the front lines, overwhelming the already exhausted French defenders. Moreover, Germany's superior communication systems and battlefield coordination play a critical role in maintaining the effectiveness of their offensive. The use of radio communication, paired with a highly efficient chain of command, allows the Germans to make real-time adjustments to their strategy and respond to any weaknesses in the French defenses. This flexibility proves to be crucial in outmaneuvering the Allies, who struggle with the slower communication systems of the time. By the time the French attempt to organize a counterattack, Paris is already within range of German artillery. The city's fall is swift and inevitable. The collapse of the French capital sends shockwaves throughout the country, leading to a breakdown in civilian morale and weakening the resolve of the French military. With Paris taken and French forces in disarray, the Germans are able to dictate terms and force an early surrender. In this alternate outcome, the fall of Paris marks the end of France as a significant military power in the war. With the French out of the conflict and Britain unable to mount an effective response, Germany's victory on the Western Front is secured, altering the entire trajectory of the war. The French surrender leads to the establishment of a German-dominated Europe, setting the stage for a new global order. British intervention and German counter-strategy. In the historical context of World War I, British intervention on the Western Front played a crucial role in halting the German advance and eventually securing an Allied victory. However, in this alternate timeline where Germany emerges victorious, British intervention is less effective, and Germany's counter-strategy is more successful in neutralizing the British threat. With the swift collapse of France, the British find themselves isolated, facing a highly coordinated and strategically advanced German military that is prepared for any intervention. The first significant difference in this timeline is the speed with which Germany neutralizes the French threat. In our history, France's ability to hold off the German advance at the Marne gave Britain enough time to mobilize and intervene. However, in this alternate timeline, the Germans have already defeated France and occupied Paris before the British Expeditionary Force can mount an effective counteroffensive. This allows Germany to shift its full attention to the British forces and significantly reduce their chances of reversing the tide. The British, while formidable on the seas, find their position on the Western Front increasingly vulnerable. The Germans, having perfected their combined arms tactics, are able to effectively counter British reinforcements. The use of stormtroopers, tactical innovation, and air superiority, combined with superior logistical support, makes the German military far more mobile and able to exploit weaknesses in British defenses. Additionally, the German Air Force dominates the skies, disrupting British movements and preventing effective resupply and reinforcement, while targeting key strategic locations such as ports and rail lines. Germany also shifts its strategy to focus on naval warfare and the British supply lines. With France out of the picture, the British find themselves increasingly isolated, facing both the threat of German forces on the continent and the continued blockade of their supply routes. The German U-boat campaign, now expanded and more efficient, severely impacts British shipping and trade, causing food shortages and weakening the morale of the British population. As Britain struggles to maintain its war effort, the strain on its military and economy becomes evident. Meanwhile, German diplomacy plays a role in further isolating Britain. The German government seeks to neutralize potential allies by offering favorable terms to nations such as Italy, which had previously been hesitant in choosing sides. With the Central Powers more united and the British facing overwhelming pressure on both the Western and naval fronts, British attempts to support the war become increasingly futile. In this alternate scenario, Germany's counter-strategy prevents Britain from having the significant impact it did historically. By swiftly neutralizing France, leveraging superior technology and tactics, and strategically targeting British vulnerabilities, Germany is able to force Britain into a position of weakness, eventually compelling a negotiated settlement or even a British surrender. This success solidifies Germany's position as the dominant power in Europe and sets the stage for its victory in World War I. Chapter 5: The Role of the Eastern Front. In the reimagined timeline where Germany emerges victorious in World War I, the Eastern Front plays a critical role in ensuring the success of the Central Powers. Unlike in the historical conflict, where the Eastern Front was a secondary theater of war that diverted resources and manpower from the Western Front, the Eastern Front in this alternate timeline becomes a decisive factor in shaping the war's outcome. With Germany's strategic focus and superior leadership, the Eastern Front is quickly stabilized, allowing Germany to shift its attention and resources to securing victory in the West. At the start of the war, Germany is able to redirect more of its resources toward the Eastern Front without the same logistical and military challenges that historically plagued its efforts. The early victories in the West, including the successful reimagining of the Schlieffen Plan, allowed Germany to dedicate a significant portion of its military power to confronting the Russian Empire. The German military's superior training, modernized tactics, and streamlined logistics give it a distinct advantage over the Russian forces, which are hampered by outdated technology, poor coordination, and logistical difficulties. In this alternate timeline, the German forces quickly achieve a breakthrough in Poland, where Russian forces are unable to mount a sustained defense. The speed and effectiveness of Germany's offensive forces, bolstered by reinforcements from the Western Front, pushed the Russian armies back and destabilized their position. The Germans, employing a combination of infantry, artillery, and tactical air support, swiftly dismantle Russian defenses and capture key cities such as Warsaw and Lviv. With the Russian military in retreat, Germany gains control over critical territories and positions itself for a final push toward the Russian heartland. The German success in the East has profound implications for the broader war effort. With Russia's ability to continue the fight severely crippled, the Eastern Front effectively collapses, allowing Germany to shift its resources back to the Western Front. Additionally, the early collapse of Russia creates a power vacuum in Eastern Europe, which Germany is able to exploit by establishing puppet states and securing vital resources. The removal of Russia as a serious threat allows the Central Powers to consolidate their control over Europe and prepare for the final stages of the war. Furthermore, Germany's diplomatic efforts play a key role in the success on the Eastern Front. Through subtle manipulation and the encouragement of internal unrest, Germany is able to weaken the Russian Empire from within. Revolutionary movements in Russia gain momentum, making it more difficult for the Russian government to maintain its war effort. The combined military pressure from Germany and internal instability ultimately forces Russia to sign an armistice or peace treaty, effectively removing it from the war. In this alternate timeline, the swift defeat of Russia on the Eastern Front allows Germany to focus its full attention on the Western Front, ensuring that its eventual victory in World War I is secured. By neutralizing the Eastern threat early on, Germany is able to avoid the drawn-out, resource-draining conflict that historically prevented it from achieving a decisive victory. A swift victory against Russia. In the alternate timeline where Germany emerges victorious in World War I, the conflict on the Eastern Front unfolds very differently from the historical scenario. A swift and decisive victory against Russia becomes a pivotal moment in securing Germany's overall success in the war. Unlike the protracted and exhausting struggle that took place in our reality, The Germans are able to effectively neutralize the Russian threat early in the conflict, shifting the balance of power and allowing Germany to focus its resources on the Western Front. The first key factor contributing to Germany's swift victory over Russia is the enhanced strategic planning and military coordination. With Germany's success in the West providing them with the necessary breathing room, they are able to deploy large, well-equipped forces to the Eastern Front. This immediate focus and concentration of military power allowed Germany to exploit Russia's weaknesses: poor logistics, outdated tactics, and underdeveloped infrastructure, while capitalizing on their own modernized army, superior mobility, and advanced artillery. The German forces begin by targeting Russia's vulnerable flanks. Instead of a slow, grinding advance, as seen in the historical conflict, Germany's military strikes swiftly at key locations such as Poland and the Baltic states. German forces employ a combination of well-coordinated infantry, artillery, and mechanized units to bypass heavily defended positions and strike at the heart of Russia's military. The use of air superiority to disrupt Russian communications and slow down reinforcements is also a crucial factor in weakening Russia's ability to mount an effective defense. Furthermore, the Russian military is plagued by internal divisions and inefficiencies that hinder its response. The Russian command structure struggles to adapt to the rapidly changing battlefield, and the lack of modern equipment makes it difficult for Russian forces to keep pace with the Germans. Meanwhile, widespread discontent among Russian troops, compounded by poor morale and harsh conditions, leads to widespread defections and a breakdown in command. With Russian forces in retreat and the Eastern Front collapsing, the Germans push toward key cities like Warsaw and St. Petersburg, quickly capturing vital territories and effectively cutting off Russia's ability to wage war. In this alternate timeline, Germany's superior logistics and swift movements prevent Russia from regrouping and offering any substantial resistance. The German military advances relentlessly, pushing Russia toward a negotiated peace. The final blow to Russia comes from both military pressure and internal collapse. Revolutionary movements gain momentum as the war drags on, further weakening the Russian Empire from within. As Russian forces continue to crumble, Germany successfully negotiates a peace settlement with Russia, effectively removing the Russian Empire from the war. This swift and decisive victory over Russia has profound implications for the broader European conflict. With the Eastern Front neutralized, Germany is able to consolidate its control over vast territories, secure critical resources, and shift its focus back to the Western Front, ensuring that the path to victory in World War I is clear. Chapter 5: The Role of the Eastern Front. In the reimagined timeline where Germany emerges victorious in World War I, the Eastern Front plays a critical role in ensuring the success of the Central Powers. Unlike in the historical conflict, where the Eastern Front was a secondary theater of war that diverted resources and manpower from the Western Front, the Eastern Front in this alternate timeline becomes a decisive factor in shaping the war's outcome. With Germany's strategic focus and superior leadership, the Eastern Front is quickly stabilized, allowing Germany to shift its attention and resources to securing victory in the West. At the start of the war, Germany is able to redirect more of its resources toward the Eastern Front, without the same logistical and military challenges that historically plagued its efforts. The early victories in the West, including the successful reimagining of the Schlieffen Plan, allowed Germany to dedicate a significant portion of its military power to confronting the Russian Empire. The German military's superior training, modernized tactics, and streamlined logistics give it a distinct advantage over the Russian forces, which are hampered by outdated technology, poor coordination, and logistical difficulties. In this alternate timeline, the German forces quickly achieve a breakthrough in Poland, where Russian forces are unable to mount a sustained defense. The speed and effectiveness of Germany's offensive forces, bolstered by reinforcements from the Western Front, push the Russian armies back and destabilize their position. The Germans, employing a combination of infantry, artillery, and tactical air support, swiftly dismantle Russian defenses and capture key cities such as Warsaw and Lviv. With the Russian military in retreat, Germany gains control over critical territories and positions itself for a final push toward the Russian heartland. The German success in the East has profound implications for the broader war effort. With Russia's ability to continue the fight severely crippled, the Eastern Front effectively collapses, allowing Germany to shift its resources back to the Western Front. Additionally, the early collapse of Russia creates a power vacuum in Eastern Europe, which Germany is able to exploit by establishing puppet states and securing vital resources. The removal of Russia as a serious threat allows the Central Powers to consolidate their control over Europe and prepare for the final stages of the war. Furthermore, Germany's diplomatic efforts play a key role in the success on the Eastern Front. Through subtle manipulation and the encouragement of internal unrest, Germany is able to weaken the Russian Empire from within. Revolutionary movements in Russia gain momentum, making it more difficult for the Russian government to maintain its war effort. The combined military pressure from Germany and internal instability ultimately forces Russia to sign an armistice or peace treaty, effectively removing it from the war. In this alternate timeline, the swift defeat of Russia on the Eastern Front allows Germany to focus its full attention on the Western Front, ensuring that its eventual victory in World War I is secured. By neutralizing the Eastern threat early on, Germany is able to avoid the drawn-out, resource-draining conflict that historically prevented it from achieving a decisive victory. A swift victory against Russia. In the alternate timeline where Germany emerges victorious in World War I, the conflict on the Eastern Front unfolds very differently from the historical scenario. A swift and decisive victory against Russia becomes a pivotal moment in securing Germany's overall success in the war. Unlike the protracted and exhausting struggle that took place in our reality, the Germans are able to effectively neutralize the Russian threat early in the conflict, shifting the balance of power and allowing Germany to focus its resources on the Western Front. The first key factor contributing to Germany's swift victory over Russia is the enhanced strategic planning and military coordination. With Germany's success in the West providing them with the necessary breathing room, they are able to deploy large, well-equipped forces to the Eastern Front. This immediate focus and concentration of military power allowed Germany to exploit Russia's weaknesses, poor logistics, outdated tactics, and underdeveloped infrastructure, while capitalizing on their own modernized army, superior mobility, and advanced artillery. The German forces begin by targeting Russia's vulnerable flanks. Instead of a slow, grinding advance, as seen in the historical conflict, Germany's military strikes swiftly at key locations such as Poland and the Baltic states. German forces employ a combination of well-coordinated infantry, artillery, and mechanized units to bypass heavily defended positions and strike at the heart of Russia's military. The use of air superiority to disrupt Russian communications and slow down reinforcements is also a crucial factor in weakening Russia's ability to mount an effective defense. Furthermore, the Russian military is plagued by internal divisions and inefficiencies that hinder its response. The Russian command structure struggles to adapt to the rapidly changing battlefield, and the lack of modern equipment makes it difficult for Russian forces to keep pace with the Germans. Meanwhile, widespread discontent among Russian troops, compounded by poor morale and harsh conditions, leads to widespread defections and a breakdown in command. With Russian forces in retreat and the Eastern Front collapsing, the Germans push toward key cities like Warsaw and St. Petersburg, quickly capturing vital territories and effectively cutting off Russia's ability to wage war. In this alternate timeline, Germany's superior logistics and swift movements prevent Russia from regrouping and offering any substantial resistance. The German military advances relentlessly, pushing Russia toward a negotiated peace. The final blow to Russia comes from both military pressure and internal collapse. revolutionary movements gain momentum as the war drags on, further weakening the Russian Empire from within. As Russian forces continue to crumble, Germany successfully negotiates a peace settlement with Russia, effectively removing the Russian Empire from the war. This swift and decisive victory over Russia has profound implications for the broader European conflict. With the Eastern Front neutralized, Germany is able to consolidate its control over vast territories, secure critical resources, and shift its focus back to the Western Front, ensuring that the path to victory in World War I is clear. Chapter 6: The Western Front, A Turning Tide. With the swift victory over Russia and the signing of the Treaty of Brest-Litovsk, Germany gains a crucial upper hand in World War I. The Eastern Front, once a significant drain on resources and manpower, is now secure, allowing the Central Powers to concentrate all of their military and strategic efforts on the Western Front. In this alternate timeline, where Germany emerges victorious, the dynamics on the Western Front shift dramatically, setting the stage for a turning tide that favors the Central Powers. The first major shift occurs in the allocation of German forces. No longer required to split their strength between two fronts, Germany is able to bring overwhelming force to bear on the Allied positions. The German High Command, benefiting from the lessons learned on the Eastern Front, is able to deploy more efficient strategies, relying on a combination of stormtrooper tactics, advanced artillery, and improved logistical support. This military shift catches the Allied forces off guard and leads to a series of devastating breakthroughs. The Battle of the Marne, historically one of the most pivotal moments in the conflict, unfolds differently in this alternate timeline. In the absence of the Russian front to distract the Germans, the Central Powers launch a more aggressive and coordinated assault. With their forces concentrated and better coordinated, the Germans rapidly advance through Belgium and into France, forcing the French military into a defensive posture. The German assault, fueled by better coordination between infantry, artillery, and air units, pushes back the French and British forces, ultimately leading to the fall of Paris. This breakthrough is a game changer for the war, as it completely alters the balance of power in Europe. The success of the German advance in the West is further compounded by a strategic shift in the way Germany conducts warfare. The use of modern technologies, such as tanks and aircraft, allows the Germans to maintain air and ground superiority, making it increasingly difficult for the Allies to resist. The German war machine becomes more efficient and technologically advanced, making it harder for the Allies to mount a successful defense. Meanwhile, the exhausted British forces, who have been stretched thin due to the prolonged conflict, are unable to effectively counter the German advance. With the fall of Paris and the loss of key strategic locations, the Allied powers begin to buckle under the pressure. The Germans, now in a dominant position on the Western Front, can dictate terms to the Allies. Their complete control of the Western Front, coupled with the peace settlement on the Eastern Front, makes Germany the undisputed victor in World War I. In this alternate reality, the turning tide on the Western Front is a direct result of Germany's ability to focus all of its resources and military might on a single front. The strategic shifts, technological innovations, and overwhelming offensive capabilities of the German forces reshaped the entire trajectory of the war, leading to a swift and decisive German victory. The collapse of the Allied defenses. In the reimagined timeline where Germany emerges victorious in World War I, the collapse of the Allied defenses on the Western Front is a crucial factor in their eventual triumph. With the strategic advantage gained from securing the Eastern Front early on, Germany is able to focus its military efforts on the Allies, launching a relentless and coordinated series of offensives that ultimately shatter the already strained Allied defense lines. The collapse of these defenses marks the decisive turning point in the conflict, leading to a swift conclusion of the war in favor of the Central Powers. The Allied forces, already worn thin by years of fighting and the pressures of maintaining a two-front war, are ill-prepared to face the full force of a concentrated German offensive. The German High Command, having learned from past mistakes and benefiting from a more unified command structure, devises a series of highly coordinated attacks designed to exploit weaknesses in the Allied positions. The German forces utilize a combination of stormtrooper tactics, heavy artillery bombardments, and mechanized units to break through the Allied lines with unprecedented speed and effectiveness. One of the key factors in the collapse of the Allied defenses is the sheer exhaustion of the British and French armies. By the time the Germans unleash their concentrated offensives, the Allies are already suffering from significant logistical issues, a lack of reinforcements, and diminishing morale. The British Expeditionary Force, which had been engaged in numerous battles over the course of the war, is stretched thin and unable to effectively respond to the German onslaught. Similarly, the French, while determined to defend their homeland, are facing internal political instability and a declining ability to resist. The Germans, on the other hand, have the advantage of fresh troops, advanced weaponry, and better logistical support. The success of their earlier victories on the Eastern Front has freed up resources that can now be redirected to the Western Front. This allows the Germans to maintain a relentless pace of attack, overwhelming the Allied defenses and forcing them into retreat. The use of new technologies, such as tanks and aircraft, gives the Germans a significant edge in both offensive and defensive operations, further contributing to the collapse of the Allied positions. As the German forces continue their advances, key Allied strongholds fall, and the front lines shift rapidly. Paris, once thought to be an impregnable symbol of French resistance, is eventually taken by the Germans, breaking the spirit of the French forces and their civilian population. With no viable defensive options left, the Allied forces are forced to surrender, unable to halt the unstoppable German offensive. The collapse of the Allied defenses is a direct result of Germany's ability to exploit the strategic and logistical weaknesses of the Allies, combined with its own superior military capabilities. With the Allies in retreat and no hope of a counteroffensive, Germany secures its victory in World War I, fundamentally reshaping the balance of power in Europe. Breakthroughs at Verdun and the Somme. In the alternate timeline where Germany emerges victorious in World War I, key battles such as Verdun and the Somme unfold in drastically different ways. These historically significant battles, which were among the bloodiest and most grueling of the war, become turning points in Germany's favor. Rather than the costly and protracted stalemates that marked their historical outcomes, these battles see decisive breakthroughs by the German forces, shifting the momentum of the war and pushing the Allies to the brink of collapse. At Verdun, Germany's offensive strategy is significantly altered. In the historical timeline, the battle was intended by the Germans to bleed the French army dry, with both sides suffering horrific casualties. However, in this alternate scenario, Germany is better prepared and able to leverage its more effective military coordination and advanced technology. German forces, utilizing rapid artillery fire, combined with the use of stormtroopers and improved tactics, are able to break through the French defenses more efficiently. The French, exhausted by years of fighting and weakened by logistical struggles, cannot hold their ground as effectively as they did historically. The rapid German advance at Verdun leads to a collapse in French morale. In contrast to the historical outcome, where the French held on tenaciously, the swift German breakthrough forces the French to retreat, leaving the Germans in control of the strategic location. The fall of Verdun, once considered an indomitable symbol of French resistance, sends shockwaves through the French military and political leadership. This loss undermines French morale and leadership, and further accelerates the unraveling of Allied defenses on the Western Front. Similarly, the Battle of the Somme, one of the most notorious examples of trench warfare, plays out differently. In the historical timeline, the battle resulted in enormous casualties for both the British and German forces, with little ground gained by either side. In the alternate scenario, the Germans, having had time to better prepare and reinforce their positions, effectively counter the British offensive. The German High Command adapts its strategy to counter the British use of tanks, deploying more advanced anti-tank weaponry, and coordinating better artillery strikes. The Germans exploit weaknesses in the British lines, launching counterattacks that push the British forces back, inflicting heavy casualties. In this reimagined version of the battle, the Germans not only halt the British advance, but also break through in key sectors of the front. The result is a significant German victory that forces the British to retreat, unable to sustain their offensive. The capture of key terrain at the Somme and the crushing defeat of British forces marks a dramatic shift in the course of the war. The breakthroughs at Verdun and the Somme are pivotal moments that shape the eventual German victory in World War I. By securing decisive victories in these crucial battles, Germany weakens the resolve of the Allies and forces them into a position of military and political vulnerability, ultimately leading to the collapse of the Allied defenses and Germany's domination of the Western Front. German control of critical French and Belgian territories. As the German forces gain momentum in their victorious alternate World War I scenario, their control of critical French and Belgian territories becomes a pivotal aspect of their strategy. The fall of key regions that were previously fiercely defended by the Allies accelerates the unraveling of the Allied war effort, providing Germany with strategic advantages that contribute significantly to their ultimate victory. In this alternate timeline, the Germans' success in battles such as Verdun and the Somme allows them to push far beyond the historic lines of the Western Front. Unlike the historical stalemates, the German forces, now free from the pressure of the Eastern Front after the peace with Russia, unleash a concentrated assault on Belgium and northern France. With their forces coordinated and bolstered by advanced technology, such as improved artillery and tanks, the Germans make swift progress. Their control over Belgium, especially its industrial heartland, provides them with vital resources, including coal and raw materials, which were essential for sustaining their war effort. The fall of Belgium marks a significant turning point. Historically, Belgium was a key Allied buffer zone, and its defense was a central part of the French and British strategy. However, in this alternate reality, the German capture of Belgium not only deprives the Allies of a strategic defensive position, but also places German forces within striking distance of France's most crucial regions. The loss of Belgium's infrastructure and resources severely hampers the Allied supply chain and logistical capabilities, limiting their ability to resupply and reinforce their front lines. German control over northern France follows a similar trajectory. The capture of key cities, including Lille and Amiens, disrupts French industrial production, depriving the Allies of critical war materials. The Germans, able to make use of these resources for their own military needs, strengthen their war machine while the Allies struggle to maintain their supply lines. Furthermore, the occupation of these territories provides Germany with valuable defensive positions, putting immense pressure on the remaining Allied forces in France. By controlling these vital regions, the Germans effectively sever the Allies' access to essential resources, forcing them into a prolonged and unsustainable conflict. The psychological impact of these territorial losses also cannot be overstated. The capture of iconic cities and the systematic dismantling of French and Belgian infrastructure further erodes morale among both the military and civilian populations of the Allies. With their defensive lines crumbling and their industrial capacity weakening, the Allied war effort begins to falter under the relentless pressure of German advancements. Germany's control over critical French and Belgian territories becomes the cornerstone of their successful strategy, allowing them to dominate the Western Front and ensure the eventual collapse of the Allied forces. Chapter 7: The Impact of Technology and Warfare. In the alternate history where Germany emerges victorious in World War I, the role of technological advancements and evolving warfare tactics becomes a decisive factor in the outcome. Germany's ability to effectively harness and innovate in military technology allows them to gain a significant edge over the Allies, influencing not only the course of key battles, but the entire strategic landscape of the war. These technological developments, combined with more effective military strategies, shift the balance of power and ultimately lead to a German victory. One of the most important technological innovations in this alternate timeline is the use of advanced artillery and heavy weaponry. Germany's expertise in artillery technology enables them to breach enemy lines with devastating accuracy and efficiency. In contrast to the historical battles, where prolonged artillery bombardments often resulted in little movement, the Germans utilized precision-targeted strikes to weaken enemy defenses before launching ground assaults. This strategy is particularly effective in battles like Verdun and the Somme, where German forces are able to break through the Allied defenses and disrupt their ability to mount a coordinated defense. Additionally, the Germans make significant strides in the development of mechanized warfare. Tanks, which were introduced during World War I, but were largely ineffective in the historical timeline, are deployed with greater success in this alternate reality. German tanks are more advanced and reliable, allowing for swift breakthroughs in Allied positions. The German use of tanks is combined with improved infantry tactics, including the use of stormtroopers, who are trained to infiltrate enemy lines and exploit weak points. This combined arms approach allows the Germans to maintain a rapid offensive pace, overwhelming the Allies before they can regroup or adapt. Aerial warfare also plays a transformative role in this reimagined conflict. While airplanes were still in their infancy during World War I, Germany makes significant advances in aviation technology, producing faster, more maneuverable aircraft. These aircraft are used not only for reconnaissance, but also for direct attacks on enemy supply lines, communication hubs, and artillery positions. German air superiority enables them to control the skies, preventing the Allies from using their own air forces effectively and crippling the Allies' ability to coordinate their forces across the front lines. Finally, advancements in logistics and communication technology give Germany a crucial advantage. The use of radio communication, combined with more efficient supply chains, allows the German military to coordinate their operations with greater precision. This technological superiority enables them to outmaneuver the Allies, keep their forces well supplied, and maintain a continuous offensive. The impact of technology and evolving warfare tactics in this alternate history shapes the outcome of World War I. By effectively integrating new innovations into their military strategy, Germany gains a decisive edge over the Allies, paving the way for their ultimate victory and fundamentally altering the course of history. Innovations that gave Germany the edge. In the alternate scenario where Germany emerges victorious in World War I, a significant factor in their success lies in the technological innovations and military strategies that give them a distinct edge over the Allies. These innovations, which go beyond the traditional methods of warfare, are instrumental in ensuring the effectiveness of German military campaigns and securing their dominance on the battlefield. One of the key innovations that gives Germany an advantage is the advancement in artillery. While artillery played a major role in the historical World War I, in this alternate timeline, Germany significantly improves its artillery capabilities. They develop more accurate and longer-range guns, which can deliver precise strikes against Allied positions and key infrastructure, crippling enemy defenses before ground forces even engage. Additionally, the Germans perfect the use of specialized ammunition, such as high-explosive shells, which devastate entrenched positions. The ability to coordinate artillery fire with infantry movements gives Germany an unparalleled advantage in breaking through Allied defenses. Another critical innovation is in the field of armored vehicles. While tanks were first used during World War I, Their effectiveness was limited by mechanical issues and the rudimentary designs of the time. In this reimagined timeline, Germany pioneers the development of more reliable and powerful tanks, which are utilized not only for direct combat, but as mobile artillery platforms that can provide supporting fire while advancing through enemy lines. These more effective tanks allow German forces to bypass traditional trench warfare tactics, outflank enemy positions, and seize key territory with greater speed and efficiency. In addition to tanks, Germany also makes groundbreaking advancements in aviation technology. The use of fighter planes and bombers becomes an integral part of their strategy, with German aircraft becoming faster, more maneuverable, and better equipped with advanced weaponry. German air superiority, gained through technological advancements in aviation, enables them to dominate the skies, preventing the Allies from launching effective air raids or maintaining supply lines. The German Air Force plays a crucial role in reconnaissance, gathering intelligence that allows the German military to anticipate Allied movements and counteract them before they can be fully executed. Germany's success is also aided by innovations in communications and logistics. The improved use of wireless radios and telegraphs enables more efficient coordination between military units, allowing for real-time battlefield communication. This technological leap ensures that German forces are able to execute complex strategies with greater synchronization, avoiding delays and making their operations far more fluid and responsive. Coupled with a more efficient supply chain system, these innovations ensure that German forces are consistently well-equipped, well-informed, and able to sustain their offensive operations across the front lines. These innovations, combined with Germany's superior coordination and military strategies, give them the edge needed to secure victory in World War I. By capitalizing on technological advancements, Germany reshapes the battlefield, outmaneuvering and outlasting the Allied forces in a way that ultimately leads to their triumph. The use of chemical weapons and new aircraft. In the reimagined World War I, where Germany emerges victorious, the use of chemical weapons and new aircraft technology plays a pivotal role in securing their dominance on the battlefield. These innovations, while controversial, provide Germany with crucial advantages that allow them to break through Allied defenses and maintain a strong offensive throughout the conflict. Chemical weapons, which were historically deployed with devastating effect in the war, are used more effectively in this alternate timeline. Germany, having learned from early experimental uses, develops more refined and deadly chemical agents. They produce gases with increased lethality and more effective delivery systems, which are strategically deployed to break the stalemates of trench warfare. While poison gas was initially met with resistance due to its unpredictable nature, German forces perfect their use of chemical weapons, including phosgene and mustard gas, in a controlled manner. These gases are used not just to incapacitate and kill enemy soldiers, but also to demoralize the opposing forces, spreading fear and uncertainty. The psychological impact of chemical warfare is significant, as Allied forces struggle to counter the effectiveness of these weapons, and the fear of gas attacks weakens the resolve of both military personnel and civilians. The deployment of gas attacks is combined with new tactics, including the use of gas clouds to obscure movement and force enemy units to retreat. The Germans also use gas as a precursor to infantry assaults, weakening the opposition before ground forces engage. This effective use of chemical weapons greatly disrupts the Allied front lines, crippling their ability to mount coherent counterattacks and ultimately contributing to Germany's overall success in the war. Simultaneously, the development of new aircraft technology gives Germany a strategic edge in aerial warfare. While airplanes had been used primarily for reconnaissance in the early stages of the war, Germany leads the way in developing more advanced fighter planes and bombers. These aircraft are faster, more maneuverable, and better equipped with weapons designed to disrupt enemy supply lines, artillery positions, and transportation routes. German air superiority, achieved through innovations in aviation, not only cripples the Allies' ability to fight on the ground, but also provides invaluable intelligence through aerial reconnaissance. With more effective airstrikes and reconnaissance flights, German forces are able to anticipate enemy movements, targeting key logistical hubs and reinforcements. Furthermore, the psychological impact of aerial bombardment and gas attacks, combined with the fear of sudden, unpredictable assaults from the sky, further weakens the Allies' morale. These technological advancements, paired with their tactical use, ensure that Germany gains a significant advantage, breaking the stalemates of the Western Front and pushing toward a decisive victory. The development and deployment of tanks. In this alternate World War I timeline where Germany emerges victorious, the development and deployment of tanks becomes one of the most significant military innovations that shifts the balance of power on the battlefield. While tanks were introduced during the war, they were still in their infancy and largely ineffective. In this reimagined conflict, however, Germany pioneers a new generation of tanks that are faster, more reliable, and better equipped to support ground forces in a way that fundamentally changes the nature of warfare. The development of German tanks begins earlier and progresses at a faster pace than in the historical timeline. Germany focuses on improving key aspects such as armor, mobility, and firepower. Unlike the British designs, which were initially bulky and prone to mechanical failure, German tanks are streamlined, featuring better engineered tracks that allow for greater movement over rough terrain. The development of more efficient engines gives these tanks improved speed and the ability to outmaneuver their enemies, making them formidable weapons on the battlefield. Additionally, the German tanks are equipped with stronger armor, capable of withstanding enemy artillery fire, and more powerful cannons, which are used to destroy fortifications, artillery positions, and enemy infantry. The deployment of tanks on the Western Front allows Germany to overcome the entrenched positions of the Allies. Tanks serve as mobile shock troops, advancing through no man's land and crushing barbed wire defenses, trenches, and machine gun nests. German tactics involve the coordinated use of tanks alongside infantry, artillery, and air support, creating a multi-pronged attack that overwhelms Allied defenses. The mobility and firepower of the tanks allow the Germans to break through previously impregnable lines and seize strategic positions with remarkable speed. The psychological impact of the German tank force is also profound. Tanks, with their intimidating appearance and ability to charge through obstacles, instill fear in the enemy. The sight of these armored vehicles rolling toward them makes Allied soldiers question their ability to hold their positions, resulting in a breakdown of morale. German tanks, combined with their superior strategy and coordination, push the Allies into retreat, further undermining their ability to counterattack. As the war progresses, the effectiveness of the German tanks leads to a strategic advantage that cannot be easily countered by the Allies. Tanks become a symbol of German military prowess, and their widespread deployment across the front lines accelerates the collapse of Allied defenses, allowing Germany to secure victory in World War I. The development and deployment of these machines of war play a crucial role in breaking the stalemate of trench warfare and reshaping the entire course of the conflict. Chapter 8: The United States' Neutrality and Internal Struggles. In this alternate World War I timeline, the United States maintains its neutrality throughout the conflict, a key factor that influences the course of the war. Unlike the historical reality, where the U.S. entered the war in 1917 and tipped the balance in favor of the Allies, the absence of American involvement allows Germany to gain an upper hand and ultimately secure victory. However, the American decision to remain neutral is not without its challenges, both internally and diplomatically. President Woodrow Wilson, in this alternate timeline, is steadfast in his commitment to neutrality, reflecting the isolationist sentiment that was widespread in the United States during the early years of the war. While Germany's advances in technology and military strategy give them the advantage in Europe, Wilson focuses on keeping the U.S. out of the conflict. The U.S. government remains concerned with its domestic affairs, avoiding the war despite increasing pressures from both sides. The American public, while sympathetic to the Allied cause, is divided on whether to intervene. A strong anti-war movement gains momentum, and many Americans view the conflict as a European problem that should not involve the United States. One of the key factors that allow the United States to maintain its neutrality is the lack of direct attacks on American soil. The Germans' strategic decision to avoid provoking the U.S. helps prevent the kind of incidents, such as the sinking of the Lusitania, that historically pushed the U.S. into joining the war. Germany, while pursuing a strategy of unrestricted submarine warfare against Britain and France, avoids targeting American ships directly. This enables them to delay American intervention and buy crucial time to press their advantage in Europe. Internally, the United States faces political divisions over its stance. While Wilson advocates for neutrality, many political factions, especially in the business community, support the Allied powers due to trade relations. The U.S. economy, while benefiting from supplying goods and munitions to the Allies, also suffers from the war's global disruption. The labor force becomes strained, with increased demands for industrial production, leading to tensions between workers and employers. Strikes and protests become more common as the war drags on, and the political climate becomes increasingly polarized. The United States also faces challenges in maintaining peace on the home front as the war effort intensifies around the world. While Wilson continues to promote the idea of a peace without victory, the continued success of Germany on the battlefield and the growing tensions within the U.S. contribute to an increasingly difficult political environment. Despite this, the United States holds fast to its neutrality, becoming a more distant observer of the war as it unfolds in Europe. This decision has profound implications for the eventual outcome of the conflict, allowing Germany to secure a victory without the intervention of the United States. A divided America, support for both sides. In the alternate timeline of World War I, where the United States remains neutral, the American public is deeply divided over which side of the conflict to support. While the official stance of the U.S. government is to maintain neutrality, the nation's population is far from united in its feelings about the war. This division is driven by a complex mix of political, economic, ethnic, and cultural factors that shape public opinion and create significant internal conflict. On one hand, many Americans, particularly those of British and French descent, feel a natural kinship with the Allied powers. The shared history, language, and cultural ties with Great Britain contribute to a strong sense of solidarity, especially among those in the eastern United States. Wealthier elites, including bankers and industrialists, often favor the Allies due to the economic connections between the U.S. and Britain. Trade with the Allies is vital for American businesses, and many see the success of the Allied powers as crucial for maintaining their financial interests. This group, which includes a portion of the political establishment, strongly supports providing material aid to the Allies, even as the government hesitates to fully engage in the war. On the other hand, there is a sizable faction within the United States that sympathizes with the Central Powers, particularly Germany. Many German Americans, who make up a significant portion of the U.S. population, see the conflict through the lens of their heritage and identify with Germany's struggle. These Americans feel a strong emotional connection to the German cause and are vocal in their opposition to U.S. involvement in the war. Additionally, labor groups and certain left-wing political factions sympathize with the Central Powers, seeing them as defenders against imperialism and capitalism, which they associate with the Allied powers. The anti-war sentiment within these groups is amplified by the horrors of trench warfare and the desire to avoid getting caught in a European conflict that, from their perspective, does not serve U.S. interests. This division in public opinion also manifests in the political realm. President Wilson's efforts to maintain neutrality face constant opposition from factions in both major parties. Some members of Congress argue that the U.S. should intervene on behalf of the Allies, while others insist that America must remain independent from European entanglements. The media, too, reflects this division, with newspapers supporting both sides, further fueling public debate and confusion. The deep internal divide within the United States has lasting effects on the nation's political and social fabric. While the government continues to advocate for neutrality, the divided public opinion creates tension and unrest, with frequent protests, strikes, and political maneuvering. This fracture within the American populace makes it increasingly difficult for the U.S. to present a unified front to the world, complicating its position as an observer of the war and influencing its eventual role in shaping the post-war order. The effects of isolationism and economic ties with Germany. In this alternate timeline of World War I, the United States' commitment to isolationism plays a significant role in shaping the nation's response to the conflict, particularly in relation to its economic ties with Germany. While the United States refrains from military intervention, its economic interests in Europe, and specifically with Germany, create complex dynamics that impact both the war and American internal affairs. Isolationism has long been a tenet of U.S. foreign policy, with many Americans believing that the nation should avoid getting involved in European conflicts. President Woodrow Wilson, in this alternate timeline, emphasizes this stance throughout the war, maintaining that America should act as a neutral party. However, isolationism does not mean disengagement from international trade or diplomacy. The United States, while not involved in the military conflict, remains a key economic player, and its industries continue to supply both the Allied and Central Powers with war materials, food, and other supplies. Despite the outward appearance of neutrality, these economic ties create significant challenges for the United States. One of the most notable factors in this alternate history is the United States' strong economic relationship with Germany. Germany, recognizing the value of American trade, establishes a network of economic and financial agreements with American businesses, particularly in the areas of manufacturing and technology. Many American corporations, including those in the industrial and agricultural sectors, are heavily invested in German markets and supply chains. This economic interdependence leads to a situation where, despite the political neutrality of the U.S., a significant portion of the American population and business community has a vested interest in Germany's success in the war. The economic ties between the United States and Germany also lead to tensions within the U.S. government and among the public. While many Americans, especially those with British and French ancestry, support the Allied cause, others, particularly those with German heritage, view the war from a different perspective. These pro-German sympathies are often reinforced by economic interests, as many U.S. companies profit from trade with Germany. Additionally, German-American communities actively advocate for the preservation of these economic relationships, fearing that an Allied victory could disrupt trade and harm the economic interests of the United States. Despite these ties, the U.S. government faces growing pressure from the British and French, who demand that America sever its economic relations with Germany. However, Wilson's administration resists this pressure, understanding that the American economy is deeply intertwined with German markets. This resistance to taking sides, particularly in economic matters, creates a rift within the U.S. as public opinion continues to fluctuate, with some factions arguing that the country's isolationism should be maintained at all costs, while others call for a stronger alignment with the Allies. In the end, these economic ties with Germany, combined with the broader isolationist sentiment, help shape the United States' limited involvement in the war, ensuring that it remains largely on the sidelines as the conflict rages in Europe. This stance, however, does not prevent the U.S. from emerging as a powerful economic force after the war's conclusion, reshaping its global role and its relationship with Europe. How the U.S. remains out of the war. In this alternate version of World War I, the United States successfully maintains its stance of neutrality throughout the conflict, despite significant pressure from both the Allies and the Central Powers. The decision to remain out of the war is driven by a combination of political, economic, and social factors, all of which work together to prevent the U.S. from engaging in military action. At the heart of this neutrality is the prevailing sentiment of isolationism that had been a cornerstone of U.S. foreign policy for much of the 19th and early 20th centuries. Many Americans believed that the conflict in Europe was distant and irrelevant to their nation's interests. With a growing sense of nationalism and a desire to avoid entangling the U.S. in foreign conflicts, public opinion remained firmly against military intervention. This isolationist mentality was further fueled by the devastating effects of previous wars, such as the Civil War, which left deep scars on the American psyche and made many citizens wary of becoming embroiled in another conflict overseas. President Woodrow Wilson, despite facing internal and external pressures to take sides, maintained his commitment to neutrality. Wilson's famous "Peace Without Victory" speech reflected his belief that the United States should not only avoid military involvement, but also act as a mediator for peace in Europe. His administration worked tirelessly to keep the nation out of the war, despite the growing conflict between the Allied and Central Powers. Wilson's personal diplomacy was critical in ensuring that the U.S. refrained from entering the conflict, and he sought to balance the interests of both the Allied and Central Powers while protecting the nation's economic interests. Economically, the United States remained deeply intertwined with both sides of the war. Although the U.S. did supply goods and materials to the Allies, it also continued trading with Germany, which helped maintain its neutral position. Germany, in particular, refrained from provoking the U.S. with attacks on American ships, which in reality had been one of the main catalysts for U.S. involvement in the war. By avoiding direct confrontation and restricting its submarine warfare campaign, Germany allowed the U.S. to maintain its neutral stance. Socially, the American public was divided, with some ethnic groups, such as German Americans, sympathizing with the Central Powers, while others, particularly those with British or French heritage, supported the Allies. The U.S. government was keenly aware of this division and worked to prevent any actions that might inflame public opinion or lead to unrest. Despite the growing conflict abroad, the United States remained firmly on the sidelines of the war, its commitment to neutrality preventing it from becoming directly involved in the fighting. This stance allowed the U.S. to avoid the devastation that Europe faced, and in the end, helped position it as a rising global power in the aftermath of the war. Chapter 9: The Collapse of the British Empire. In this alternate timeline, the outcome of World War I unfolds very differently for the British Empire, which faces significant challenges that ultimately lead to its collapse. With the rise of German power and the failure of the Allies to achieve a decisive victory, the British Empire begins to crumble under the weight of both military defeat and internal unrest. The impact of Germany's victory reshapes the global order, weakening Britain's hold on its colonies and severely undermining its economic and political influence. As the war stretches on, Britain's resources become increasingly strained. The prolonged conflict, coupled with the heavy toll it takes on British manpower and industry, severely weakens the empire. The British military struggles to maintain its control over both the Western and Eastern fronts, especially with the more successful German campaigns in Europe. The weakening of British forces creates an opening for nationalist movements within its colonies, particularly in India and Africa, where demands for independence intensify. Without the full support of the United States, which remains neutral and disengaged from European affairs, Britain finds itself unable to rally the necessary resources to maintain its vast imperial reach. Furthermore, the economic consequences of Britain's failure to secure victory have far-reaching effects. With the defeat of the Allies, British trade routes are disrupted, and the once thriving British economy begins to falter. The war debt, coupled with the cost of rebuilding, cripples the nation's financial standing. The loss of markets in Europe and a weakened pound sterling further undermine Britain's position as a global economic power. Additionally, the failure to assert control over the European continent, coupled with the growing influence of Germany, leads to a shift in global economic dynamics, with Germany emerging as the dominant force in European trade. In the face of economic collapse, Britain's colonies, which had been sources of both wealth and manpower throughout the war, begin to question the legitimacy of British rule. Nationalist movements gain momentum, and many colonies, inspired by the success of Germany, begin to demand self-determination. India, which had been a crucial part of the British Empire, becomes a focal point for revolutionary movements, pushing Britain to concede to some degree of independence. Other colonies, including those in Africa and the Pacific, follow suit, further fragmenting the empire. The collapse of the British Empire accelerates in the post-war years. With the loss of key territories and a diminishing global influence, Britain's status as a world power begins to fade. Germany's victory in World War I, coupled with the weakening of British power, sets the stage for a new geopolitical order, one where the British Empire no longer dominates the global stage. The consequences of this collapse are felt not only in Britain but across the world, as former colonies gain independence and new powers, such as Germany and the United States, rise to the forefront of global politics. German naval dominance and blockade of Britain. In this alternate history, the rise of German naval power plays a pivotal role in the collapse of the British Empire and the ultimate outcome of World War I. With Germany emerging victorious, one of the most significant shifts in global power dynamics is the establishment of German naval dominance, which severely undermines Britain's maritime supremacy. This shift allows Germany to impose a devastating blockade on Britain, which proves to be a major factor in the Allied defeat. Throughout the early stages of the war, the Royal Navy had been a cornerstone of British power, safeguarding its trade routes and maintaining its empire. However, in this timeline, the German Navy successfully adapts to the evolving nature of warfare and begins to challenge British control of the seas. Through strategic innovations, including the development of advanced U-boats and the creation of more powerful battleships, the German fleet manages to gain a significant advantage over the British. Germany's ability to outmaneuver and outgun the British Navy weakens Britain's ability to control its vital sea lanes. The German Navy's success in dominating the seas has a profound impact on Britain's war effort. With the blockade of British ports, Germany effectively disrupts the flow of supplies into the island nation. The British economy, already strained by the prolonged conflict, begins to collapse as critical imports such as food, fuel, and raw materials are cut off. The blockade forces Britain to rely on increasingly desperate measures, but with the Royal Navy stretched thin and unable to break the blockade, Britain finds itself on the brink of economic ruin. The effects of the blockade are felt across the British Isles. In addition to the economic strain, there is a growing sense of disillusionment among the British public, who are confronted with shortages and mounting casualties on the front lines. The inability to break free from Germany's stranglehold on trade and logistics further demoralizes the population and weakens the resolve of the British government. At the same time, Germany's ability to maintain its own supply lines, bolstered by its naval superiority, gives it a critical advantage in the war. As the conflict drags on, the blockade of Britain becomes a decisive factor in the eventual collapse of British power. Unable to sustain its war effort or protect its global interests, Britain faces mounting internal pressure and unrest. The blockade not only prevents Britain from receiving critical war materials, but also leads to a breakdown in its colonial administration, as rebellions and independence movements spread throughout the empire. Germany's naval dominance shifts the balance of power in the world, signaling the decline of the British Empire and the emergence of Germany as the preeminent global power in the post-war era. The successful blockade of Britain is a key element of Germany's strategic victory, cementing its place as a new maritime power and reshaping the global geopolitical landscape for years to come. The psychological toll on British civilians and soldiers. The prolonged and devastating nature of World War I, compounded by Germany's successful blockade of Britain, places a tremendous psychological toll on both British civilians and soldiers. In this alternate history, where Germany emerges victorious, the mental and emotional strain experienced by those on the front lines and at home proves to be one of the most profound consequences of the war. For soldiers, the horrors of trench warfare are amplified by the extended duration of the conflict. With the loss of key battles and a deteriorating military position, British troops find themselves facing not only physical danger, but also an ever-deepening sense of hopelessness. The constant bombardment, the threat of gas attacks, and the unimaginable losses in battle wear down their morale. The psychological effects of this prolonged warfare, including shell shock, now known as post-traumatic stress disorder, are widespread, but the British military struggles to provide adequate care for the men returning from the front. Many soldiers return home mentally scarred, unable to reintegrate into society due to the emotional and psychological trauma they've endured. For British civilians, the psychological toll is no less severe. The relentless German blockade and the resulting shortages create a climate of fear, and anxiety throughout the country. The scarcity of food, fuel, and essential goods leads to rationing, which places immense pressure on everyday life. Families are torn apart by the absence of fathers, sons, and husbands who have gone to the front, and many receive devastating news of the death or injury of their loved ones. The constant threat of German naval attacks, coupled with the visible decline in the empire's ability to maintain its global influence, fosters a growing sense of despair and helplessness. In cities and towns across Britain, the public mood shifts from the initial resolve to a sense of frustration and defeat. The government's inability to break the blockade or achieve victory on the battlefield exacerbates this feeling. As the war drags on and the economic situation worsens, people begin to question the very purpose of the conflict and the leadership that had led them into it. This growing disillusionment leads to civil unrest, strikes, and protests as the British public demands an end to the suffering. The collective trauma of the war and the psychological burden borne by the British people have far-reaching consequences. The emotional scars of soldiers and civilians alike reshape the post-war British psyche, creating a generation deeply marked by the war's devastation. The collapse of the British Empire, which seems inevitable in this alternate history, is not just a political and economic downfall. It is also a profound psychological defeat that impacts the identity and future of the British nation. A negotiated peace with Britain. In this alternate history, Germany's dominance on the battlefield and in naval warfare forces Britain to consider a negotiated peace rather than continuing the brutal conflict. By the time the British government recognizes the extent of its losses and the strain on its population, the prospect of a military victory seems increasingly unlikely. With German forces controlling vast portions of Europe and the British Empire's global influence waning, Britain is compelled to seek an end to the war on terms favorable to Germany. The decision to pursue peace comes after the failure of British attempts to break the German blockade and the inability to secure reinforcements or critical supplies due to Germany's naval superiority. The economic and psychological toll on Britain's civilian population, coupled with the mounting casualties and ongoing social unrest, forces the government to reconsider its position. The continued losses, both on the battlefield and at home, prompt a shift in the national mood, where the public increasingly supports diplomatic negotiations as a means of ending the war. The terms of the negotiated peace reflect Germany's newfound power and influence. Germany demands significant territorial concessions from Britain, including the relinquishment of colonial holdings and the recognition of its dominance in Europe. British influence in key regions, particularly in Africa and the Middle East, is severely diminished, with many of its colonies either becoming independent or falling under German control. The peace treaty also requires Britain to recognize Germany's control over the European mainland, including the former French territories that Germany has successfully conquered. In exchange for peace, Britain is forced to accept the humiliating reality of a war it cannot win. The British government must make difficult compromises, abandoning any hope of preserving its global empire and accepting the reality of a Europe reshaped by German power. The loss of colonial holdings and the recognition of Germany's supremacy in Europe leave Britain relegated to a secondary power status, with its ability to influence global events greatly diminished. This negotiated peace represents not just a military defeat, but also a profound shift in the balance of power. It marks the end of the British Empire as a dominant force in world affairs, replaced by a Germany-led European order. The peace process itself leaves a lasting scar on British national identity, as the once proud empire is forced to bow to the new geopolitical realities imposed by a victorious Germany. Chapter 10: The Fall of the French Republic. In this alternate timeline, the French Republic faces its ultimate collapse in the wake of Germany's decisive victory. The fall of France represents not only a military defeat, but also the crumbling of a nation's political and social structure, leaving a deep scar on French national identity. The events that lead to France's collapse are marked by internal divisions, military failure, and overwhelming external pressure from Germany. At the outset of the war, France, a key member of the Allies, is already under strain due to the enormous pressure from the protracted conflict on the Western Front. Despite early successes in holding off German advances, France's military is stretched thin and unable to recover after critical defeats. In this alternate history, the German advance into France proceeds with greater speed and effectiveness, aided by superior tactics, logistics, and military innovations. German forces capture Paris, breaking the backbone of French resistance. This loss is not just a military blow, but a psychological one that shatters French morale and accelerates the collapse of the Republic. The political and social landscape within France further exacerbates its vulnerability. As the war drags on and France suffers mounting losses, divisions within the government and the population deepen. The French civilian population, worn down by the endless casualties and the harsh realities of warfare, grows increasingly disillusioned with their leadership. The economic strain of the war, exacerbated by German naval dominance and the destruction of vital infrastructure, leads to widespread shortages and a crumbling economy. This, in turn, breeds unrest among the French working class and labor movements, while growing protests and strikes weaken the resolve of the French government. The failure to secure a quick victory or protect critical territories leads to a breakdown in military leadership. French generals, already overburdened and unable to stem the German tide, struggle to coordinate effective defenses. The resulting collapse of French forces leaves the nation exposed to German occupation. Cities, including Paris, fall into German hands, and a puppet government loyal to Berlin is established, effectively ending the French Republic. France is forced into an armistice, and its sovereignty is severely undermined. The fall of the French Republic marks a decisive moment in European history. The country's once proud position as a global power is diminished, and its cultural and political influence is eclipsed by the rise of a German-dominated Europe. In the aftermath, France's social fabric is left in tatters, with the nation grappling with the profound loss of its national identity and the long-lasting scars of occupation. The fall of France serves as a harbinger of a new geopolitical order, with Germany asserting control over much of Europe, and marks the end of France's role as a central force in shaping world affairs. German occupation of Paris and other strategic cities. The German occupation of Paris and other key French cities marks one of the most critical moments in the alternate timeline where Germany emerges victorious in World War I. The fall of Paris, the capital of France, signifies not only a military conquest, but also a psychological and symbolic blow to the French and Allied morale. The occupation of these strategic cities reshapes the power dynamics in Europe, and the effects are felt not only in France but throughout the continent. The rapid German advance, aided by superior military tactics and innovations, leads to the swift fall of Paris, which becomes the focal point of German occupation. Once the city falls, it is not simply a military garrison for the Germans, but a symbol of their triumph. The French government, unable to defend the city, is forced to relocate, further weakening its position and legitimacy. The psychological impact on the French people is immense. Paris, the cultural heart of France and one of the world's greatest cities, now flies the German flag. The occupation brings with it an air of humiliation and despair as the once proud capital falls to an enemy they once thought impossible to conquer. In addition to Paris, other critical French cities, such as Lyon, Marseille, and Bordeaux, are also captured and placed under German control. These cities, along with Paris, serve as strategic hubs for the occupation forces. Their capture ensures that France's infrastructure, communication lines, and vital resources fall under German authority. The industrial regions of the north, rich in coal and iron ore, are essential to Germany's ability to continue the war effort, and their occupation significantly weakens France's capacity to resist. French ports along the Mediterranean and Atlantic also come under German control, effectively eliminating any remaining French naval presence. The German occupation of these cities leads to the establishment of a puppet government, loyal to Berlin. The French population is subjected to harsh occupation policies with widespread surveillance and repression. Resistance movements, though persistent, are heavily suppressed by German forces. The French economy, already crippled by the war, is further drained by the demands of the occupation as Germany extracts resources and manpower to fuel its own military and industrial efforts. The occupation of Paris and other strategic cities marks a profound shift in the balance of power. It signals the collapse of the French Republic and the establishment of a German-dominated Europe. The long-term effects of this occupation are felt in the social, political, and economic fabric of France, which is left struggling to reclaim its sovereignty in the face of an overwhelming and oppressive German presence. Political instability and a German-backed French government. The German victory in World War I and the subsequent occupation of France create an environment of deep political instability within the country. As German forces tighten their control over key regions, including Paris, the French Republic crumbles under the weight of military defeat and social unrest. In this vacuum, a pro-German French government emerges, backed by Berlin, but this new regime faces significant challenges in asserting its legitimacy and controlling the fractured French population. With the fall of Paris and the surrender of the French government, the political landscape is thrown into chaos. The French leadership, unable to defend the nation or maintain order, is forced to either flee or capitulate. This leads to a political vacuum, which the Germans are quick to exploit. They install a puppet government that is sympathetic to German interests, ensuring that their hold over France remains firm. The new French government, however, is deeply unpopular with large segments of the population, especially those who still hold out hope for an eventual return to sovereignty and a resistance to German occupation. This puppet government faces immense challenges in maintaining order and quelling growing unrest. The French people, having suffered through years of brutal occupation and defeat, are disillusioned with their new leaders. Many French citizens view the German-backed government as a betrayal of their national identity, and a wave of resistance movements begins to swell. These groups, ranging from small militant factions to larger political organizations, resist the German occupation and the puppet government, often clashing violently with the authorities. However, the German military presence in France is overwhelming, and any attempts at insurrection are swiftly crushed. The new French government is also plagued by internal divisions. Some of its members are more cooperative with Germany, believing that collaboration offers the best chance for rebuilding the country, while others advocate for a more passive stance, hoping that time will eventually force Germany to loosen its grip. These disagreements create a fragmented political environment that undermines the effectiveness of the government and alienates further segments of the population. Germany's backing of this government ensures a degree of stability, but it is fragile at best. The French government, despite its outward appearance of compliance, faces constant pressure from both internal resistance and external criticism. The political instability in France continues to simmer beneath the surface, leaving the country deeply divided and politically weak. The German-backed French government, though ostensibly in power, struggles to maintain its authority over a population that remains fiercely loyal to its own ideals of freedom and independence. The surrender of France and a new peace settlement. The surrender of France marks a pivotal moment in this alternate history of World War I, with far-reaching consequences for both the French people and the broader European balance of power. After the fall of Paris and the subsequent collapse of the French military, the French government, unable to resist further, is forced into a peace settlement that favors Germany's interests. This peace agreement, unlike the Treaty of Versailles in our timeline, reflects Germany's dominant position and reshapes Europe in ways that would echo throughout the 20th century. The surrender of France comes after months of brutal occupation and internal disarray, with the French military unable to mount a successful defense. The German forces, having secured control of strategic cities like Paris and Marseille, offer the French a harsh but pragmatic choice: surrender with conditions or face further devastation. The terms of the surrender are severe, with France losing significant territory, including key industrial and agricultural regions. Alsace-Lorraine, which had been a point of contention for decades, is permanently ceded to Germany, along with other regions rich in resources, such as coal fields in northern France. The political fallout from the surrender is immediate and profound. The French government, weakened by years of war and occupation, finds itself with no choice but to accept Germany's terms. A new peace settlement is negotiated, one that clearly reflects Germany's newfound dominance over Europe. France, now a subdued nation, is forced to sign a peace agreement that limits its sovereignty and cements German control over large parts of its territory. The French military is disbanded, and its economy is crippled under the weight of reparations and occupation costs. In exchange, France is granted a fragile peace, but at the expense of its national identity and future autonomy. This peace settlement is a stark contrast to the post-war negotiations in our timeline. Rather than punishing Germany with reparations, the settlement imposes heavy costs on France, leaving the country economically and politically weakened. The German Empire emerges as the dominant European power, with its influence extending far beyond the borders of its homeland. The terms of the settlement are designed to ensure German control over Europe's future, while France is reduced to a diminished state, struggling to rebuild both its economy and its political unity. The surrender of France and the new peace settlement fundamentally alter the trajectory of European history. Germany's victory leads to a new era of dominance, while France is left to contend with its loss of power and prestige on the world stage. This settlement sets the stage for future tensions in Europe, as Germany's unchecked rise challenges the stability of the continent for years to come. Chapter 11: The New German Empire. With the successful conclusion of the war and the surrender of France, the German Empire finds itself on the cusp of a new era. The military triumph over its enemies, coupled with the collapse of the French Republic and the negotiations for a new peace settlement, propels Germany into an unprecedented position of power and influence. This victory results in a reshaped political landscape in Europe, one where Germany is no longer a rising power, but a dominant empire at the center of the continent's affairs. The creation of the new German Empire begins with a consolidation of its territorial gains. Following the surrender of France, Germany solidifies its control over key regions like Alsace-Lorraine and northern France. These territories are not just strategic in terms of resources, but also symbolic, marking the reclamation of long-disputed lands and solidifying Germany's role as the leading power in Europe. This territorial expansion extends Germany's influence well beyond its pre-war borders, with colonies in Africa and Asia becoming more tightly integrated into the imperial fold. The expanded empire allows Germany to control crucial trade routes and secure economic dominance, ensuring its place as the most powerful nation on the continent. Internally, the new empire undergoes a transformation. The success of the war and the signing of the peace settlement provide legitimacy to the ruling monarchy and military elite. The German Kaiser, strengthened by victory, solidifies his hold on power, backed by a society that has proven itself capable of both military and industrial prowess. The political system evolves into a more centralized form of governance, with the military playing an increasingly prominent role in decision-making processes. The population, though weary from the war, largely supports the government, as it has delivered on promises of national glory and security. The impact of this new empire extends beyond Europe. With France and Britain crippled, Germany becomes the primary economic and political force in global affairs. The United States, despite its isolationism, faces a newly emboldened Germany in the international arena. The balance of power shifts decisively as the German Empire assumes the role once occupied by the British Empire in global politics. This new German Empire, built on the foundations of military strength, political stability, and economic power, is poised to shape the future of Europe and the world. However, the seeds of discontent lie in the newly acquired territories, and the challenge of maintaining a vast empire with diverse populations could eventually strain its unity. But for now, Germany stands at the height of its power, its empire stretching across Europe and the globe. Redrawing the map of Europe, territorial gains. With the German victory in World War I and the subsequent peace settlement, the map of Europe is irrevocably altered. The defeat of France and the collapse of the Allied front lead to significant territorial gains for the German Empire, reshaping not only the physical geography of the continent, but also its political and cultural landscape. One of the most immediate and symbolic changes is the return of Alsace-Lorraine, a region that had been the focal point of Franco-German conflict for decades. This area, rich in natural resources and strategically important, is permanently ceded to Germany. In addition to Alsace-Lorraine, Germany secures control over the coal-rich regions of northern France, including the industrial heartlands that had once powered the French economy. These territories are not only valuable for their resources, but also serve to weaken France, leaving it economically debilitated and politically unstable. Germany's territorial gains extend beyond France. The peace settlement sees the disintegration of the Austro-Hungarian Empire, which had been a central power in Central Europe. The dissolution of this multi-ethnic empire leads to the creation of smaller, less powerful states, many of which fall under German influence or direct control. The areas of Bohemia, Slovakia, and parts of the Balkans, previously under Austro-Hungarian rule, are either annexed by Germany or placed under its political sway, further strengthening the empire's hold over Central and Eastern Europe. The Ottoman Empire, also on the losing side of the war, faces a similar fate. With its territories crumbling, parts of the Ottoman Empire's European holdings are absorbed into the German sphere of influence. This includes significant territories in the Balkans and the Middle East, where Germany establishes puppet governments or directly governs strategic regions, enhancing its geopolitical leverage. The redrawing of Europe's borders creates a continent where Germany holds a dominant position. The map now reflects the German Empire's expansion and its control over vast swaths of Europe, from the Channel coast of France to the Balkans and beyond. This territorial reorganization not only solidifies Germany's political and economic power, but also undermines the traditional European powers. France, Britain, and Russia are left weakened and divided, while Germany's territorial expansion leads to a new era of imperial dominance. In this new Europe, Germany's power is undeniable, with its borders stretching across key territories that grant it immense strategic advantages. The future of the continent will be shaped by this redefined map, with Germany as the central player in European affairs. The establishment of German hegemony in Central Europe. With the conclusion of World War I and the subsequent peace settlements, Germany's influence over Central Europe becomes absolute, establishing the foundations for its hegemony in the region. The dismantling of the Austro-Hungarian Empire, coupled with the collapse of other traditional powers, such as France and Russia, paves the way for Germany to assert dominance and reshape the political, economic, and military landscape of Central Europe. The most immediate consequence of Germany's victory is its direct control over former Austro-Hungarian territories. As Austria-Hungary disintegrates into several smaller, weaker states, Germany steps in to fill the power vacuum. The region once dominated by the Austro-Hungarian Empire is now increasingly tied to German political and military interests. Areas like Bohemia, Slovakia, and parts of the Balkans are absorbed into the German sphere, either through annexation or through puppet regimes that serve the will of Berlin. This territorial expansion enhances Germany's strategic position in Central Europe, solidifying its control over key resources and trade routes. Germany's military and political influence further cements its hegemony. With its borders now stretched from the North Sea to the Alps and from Belgium to the Balkans, Germany establishes a series of defensive and offensive military alliances, ensuring that no power in the region can challenge its supremacy. The German military becomes the central force in Europe, both in terms of power projection and technological innovation. The defeat of France and Russia provides Germany with a free hand in directing the continent's military strategy, as it becomes the primary enforcer of peace, ensuring that no other power can rise to challenge its dominance. Economically, Germany's hegemony in Central Europe is reinforced by its control of critical industries and resources. The coal and steel industries of former French and Austro-Hungarian territories fall under German control, providing the empire with unparalleled economic strength. This wealth allows Germany to invest in infrastructure projects, further integrating Central Europe into its economic orbit. The German mark becomes the dominant currency in the region, and German companies set the standard for industry and technology. Through these political, military, and economic measures, Germany establishes an unassailable hegemony in Central Europe. This dominance not only secures Germany's position as the preeminent power in Europe, but also reshapes the future of the continent, ensuring that the German Empire remains the central force in shaping Europe's destiny for years to come. The political, social, and economic changes in Germany. The victory in World War I and the subsequent establishment of German hegemony in Europe usher in a period of profound political, social, and economic transformation within Germany. These changes redefine the country's role on the world stage and significantly alter the lives of its citizens. Politically, the triumph in the war consolidates Germany's status as the dominant European power. The defeat of its traditional rivals, France, Britain, and Russia, allows the German Empire to extend its influence across Central and Eastern Europe. The political system, already rooted in an autocratic structure under the Kaiser, evolves to further centralize power in the hands of the military and elite bureaucratic classes. The absence of any serious opposition, both internally and externally, means that the German leadership can implement policies with little resistance. The consolidation of power leads to the establishment of a more authoritarian and militaristic regime, which focuses on maintaining the empire's stability and its dominance in Europe. Socially, the German victory reinforces national pride and unity. The sense of accomplishment and superiority permeates all aspects of society. The war's success transforms the national identity, shifting focus toward the strength of the German state and the superiority of its people. This is reflected in a nationalistic cultural renaissance that celebrates Germany's military prowess and the ideals of discipline and order. However, the war also leaves a lasting psychological toll on the population. The immense human and material costs of the conflict result in widespread trauma, especially among soldiers and their families. At the same time, the victory brings with it the challenge of integrating newly acquired territories, which require a delicate balance of governance and cultural integration. The influx of foreign populations and the imposition of German ideals create tensions in these newly annexed regions. Economically, Germany emerges as the most powerful and wealthiest nation in Europe. The annexation of industrial regions in France, Belgium, and Austria-Hungary significantly boosts Germany's economic output. Control over vital resources such as coal, steel, and oil strengthens the German economy, and the empire becomes the center of European trade and industry. This newfound economic power allows Germany to invest heavily in infrastructure, military technology, and modernization projects, solidifying its dominance. The rise of Germany's economic prowess, however, is not without its challenges. While the elite and industrial sectors benefit from the war's outcome, the working class faces the burden of ongoing militarization, economic inequality, and the social upheaval caused by the war's long-lasting effects. In this new era of German dominance, the political, social, and economic structures evolve dramatically, laying the groundwork for the future direction of the German Empire and its role in global affairs. Chapter 12: The End of the Great War. The end of the Great War, as envisioned in this alternate history, marks not only the cessation of hostilities, but also the dawn of a new geopolitical reality. In the wake of Germany's decisive victory, the world as it had known it is fundamentally transformed. The defeat of the Allied powers leaves Europe under the shadow of the German Empire, with the old balance of power shattered and a new order established. As the final offensives on both the Western and Eastern fronts bring the war to a close, Germany's military superiority becomes indisputable. The collapse of the British and French war efforts signals the end of any serious opposition to German ambitions. The surrender of France, the weakening of Britain, and the exit of Russia from the conflict through the Treaty of Brest-Litovsk result in a dramatic shift in the international balance of power. With the signing of peace treaties, including the negotiated armistice with Britain, Germany secures territorial gains and solidifies its hold over much of Europe. The French Republic, fractured by internal strife and the pressure of German occupation, gives way to a German-backed government that effectively ends the centuries-old tradition of French republicanism. In Britain, the economic strain from naval blockades and the psychological toll of war lead to a similar collapse, pushing the British government to accept a negotiated peace. The war's end is not marked by celebrations, but rather by a somber realization of the immense human cost. Though Germany emerges victorious, it is a victory tainted by the scars of a brutal and drawn-out conflict. The immense losses suffered by all sides, the destruction of cities, and the toll on civilian populations leave the world reeling. For Germany, the price of victory is high, millions of lives lost, the ongoing challenge of managing newly conquered territories, and the looming threat of internal dissent. In the aftermath of the war, Europe is irrevocably reshaped. The old powers, once the driving forces of the continent, now languish in the shadow of the German Empire. The once mighty British and French empires are left to grapple with their diminished global influence. Germany's dominance is unparalleled, but the cost of maintaining that supremacy, internally and externally, remains a heavy burden. The Great War's end may mark the cessation of fighting, but the true consequences of this altered world are only just beginning to unfold. Final peace talks and the Treaty of Berlin. As the dust settles from the Great War, the final peace talks are held in Berlin, the heart of the new German Empire. These negotiations, which take place in the shadow of German military and political dominance, are a stark contrast to the post-war peace processes of the real timeline. Gone are the grand summits in Versailles or London, where the defeated powers were forced to accept harsh terms. In this alternate history, Germany assumes the role of the victor and negotiates the terms of peace with a much firmer hand. The Treaty of Berlin, signed in late 1918, formally ends the conflict between Germany and the remaining Allied powers. It is a document that reflects Germany's newfound hegemonic status in Europe. Unlike the Treaty of Versailles, which imposed punitive measures on Germany in our history, the Treaty of Berlin is a product of German triumph. The terms are harsh, but they primarily serve to secure German dominance and reshape the European order to its advantage. Key provisions of the Treaty of Berlin include the complete disbanding of the French Republic with the creation of a pro-German government in Paris. The once proud French nation, battered by occupation and internal strife, is now a satellite state of the German Empire. Germany annexes large portions of French territory, including the industrially rich regions of Alsace-Lorraine and much of northern France. This territorial expansion not only strengthens Germany's economic base, but also serves as a powerful symbol of victory. In addition to French concessions, the Treaty of Berlin imposes heavy reparations on Britain and its colonies. The British Empire, unable to sustain its global naval presence due to Germany's blockade and weakened by internal strife, is forced to cede control over several overseas territories, particularly in Africa and Asia, to Germany. Britain also faces a heavy economic penalty, which further diminishes its standing on the world stage. The treaty also outlines the dissolution of Russia's Eastern Front, with a new border that shifts the balance of power in the region. Germany consolidates its control over Eastern Europe, securing vital resources and creating a buffer zone against potential Russian resurgence. The Treaty of Berlin thus not only brings an end to the fighting, but also redefines the geopolitical map of Europe and beyond, securing Germany's place as the undisputed dominant power in the world. The signing of the Treaty of Berlin is seen as both a victory and a grim reminder of the war's staggering toll. Though Germany is victorious, the long-term stability of the empire remains uncertain as the world watches its rise to power with trepidation. The dismantling of the Entente powers. In the aftermath of Germany's decisive victory, the once mighty Entente powers are forced to undergo a rapid and irreversible dismantling. The nations that had once stood united against the Central Powers find themselves in a weakened and divided state, their global influence shattered, and their internal stability in question. The Treaty of Berlin, signed by Germany and its allies, marks the final blow to the Entente's unity and positions the Central Powers as the new architects of European and global politics. France, having borne the brunt of the conflict, is left politically and economically destabilized. The occupation of Paris and the collapse of the French Republic usher in a new era of German dominance. With their capital lost and their government replaced by a pro-German administration, the French people are left grappling with the humiliation of their defeat. The country's territorial losses to Germany, including key industrial regions such as Alsace-Lorraine, further cripple its economic future. France's ability to project power on the world stage is severely diminished, and it is now relegated to a satellite state under German influence. Britain, though not completely occupied, is profoundly affected by its defeat. The collapse of its naval supremacy due to Germany's blockade has left Britain with little ability to maintain its once vast empire. The war's toll, both in terms of human loss and financial debt, weakens Britain's position as a global power. The Treaty of Berlin forces Britain to relinquish several of its overseas colonies, particularly in Africa and Asia, which are ceded to Germany. The British Empire, once the sun that never set, now faces the reality of a much smaller and more fragmented imperial presence. Additionally, the war has fostered significant social unrest within the UK, leading to political upheaval and the erosion of public confidence in the ruling government. Russia's role in the Entente is also irreversibly altered. The swift German victory on the Eastern Front leads to the signing of the Treaty of Brest-Litovsk, which removes Russia from the war entirely. With the collapse of the Tsarist regime and the subsequent Bolshevik Revolution, Russia faces internal chaos and disintegration. The loss of its territorial holdings in Eastern Europe, coupled with political instability, leaves Russia struggling to recover and reassert itself as a major European power. The dismantling of the Entente powers leads to the rise of a new geopolitical order, one in which Germany not only secures its place as the dominant force in Europe, but also reshapes global politics in its own image. The traditional balance of power that had once existed among the great European nations has now been irrevocably altered, with Germany standing at the center of a new world order. The long-term effects of Germany's victory on global power dynamics. Germany's victory in World War I has profound and far-reaching implications for the global balance of power. With the defeat of the Entente powers and the imposition of the Treaty of Berlin, Germany emerges as the preeminent global superpower, reshaping not only Europe but also the geopolitical landscape on a global scale. The effects of Germany's success reverberate through both political and economic spheres, altering the course of history for decades to come. In Europe, Germany's dominance leads to the establishment of the German Empire as the undisputed leader of the continent. With the French Republic collapsed, the British Empire weakened, and Russia in disarray, Germany's influence extends well beyond its borders. German hegemony in Central and Eastern Europe becomes a defining feature of the continent, with the establishment of client states and puppet governments in territories formerly held by the Entente. Germany is able to secure vital resources and maintain military supremacy, fostering an economic boom that consolidates its newfound power. As the leading industrial and military force in Europe, Germany dictates the terms of trade, security, and diplomacy, ensuring its central role in shaping European affairs for the foreseeable future. On the global stage, Germany's victory signals the end of the British Empire's primacy. The loss of key colonies and the dismantling of British naval superiority dramatically alters the global balance of power. The United States, which had remained neutral throughout the war, finds itself in a difficult position as it faces the reality of a world where Germany is the dominant global power. Though the U.S. remains economically powerful, it is no longer the unquestioned leader of the Western world. Instead, Germany's influence grows as it develops stronger ties with newly created client states in Asia, Africa, and the Middle East, and begins to exert its influence on international trade and policy. Germany's victory also ushers in a new era of technological and military innovation. The war's aftermath sees Germany invest heavily in cutting-edge technologies, maintaining its competitive edge in fields such as aerospace, chemical engineering, and weaponry. These innovations, coupled with the economic stability provided by its imperial holdings, allow Germany to maintain its military and industrial dominance. This technological prowess not only bolsters its security, but also enables Germany to project power on a global scale, ensuring its place as the central player in international relations. In the long term, Germany's victory results in a shift away from a multipolar world order toward a unipolar one dominated by German influence. The social, political, and economic consequences of this new world order are felt across the globe, reshaping alliances, trade networks, and the balance of military power for the next century. Conclusion: the alternate history of World War I, in which Germany emerges victorious, presents a dramatically different world than the one we know today. The collapse of the Entente powers, the establishment of German dominance in Europe, and the reshaping of global power dynamics create a new geopolitical landscape. By examining the key factors that led to Germany's success, the reimagined strategies on the battlefield, and the consequences of their victory, we gain insight into a world shaped by a single nation's overwhelming influence. In this alternate timeline, the defeat of France, Britain, and Russia enables Germany to exert its hegemony across Europe and beyond. By controlling critical territories and establishing client states, Germany solidifies its power in Central and Eastern Europe, transforming the political and economic order of the continent. With an unprecedented level of control over key resources and military advancements, Germany's influence extends far beyond its borders, reshaping not only Europe, but the global balance of power. The shift in global dynamics has profound implications for the United States, which, though economically powerful, finds itself overshadowed by a resurgent German empire. The defeat of traditional European powers opens up new opportunities for Germany to expand its influence in Asia, Africa, and the Middle East, further consolidating its position as the preeminent global power. At the same time, the psychological toll on nations like Britain and France reshapes their national identities, weakening their ability to challenge Germany's supremacy. The long-term effects of Germany's victory are felt across the century that follows. The dismantling of the British Empire, the rise of German technological dominance, and the reordering of international alliances create a new world order where Germany's influence extends into the realms of military, economic, and technological leadership. This dominance fosters a unipolar world in which Germany shapes the course of history for generations to come. Ultimately, Germany's victory in World War I changes the trajectory of the 20th century. It introduces an alternative path for global development, one in which the balance of power, technological innovation, and diplomatic relations are redefined by a single nation's strategic vision and determination. This alternate history serves as a reminder of the delicate and unpredictable nature of global conflict and its lasting consequences on the world stage.